Reborn. I didn't stop my boyfriend from skipping school for his first love. I got into Harvard, but they wouldn't let me go. Welcome to Warm Era. Today's story is about a woman who learned that the best revenge is not destruction, it is becoming the person no one can take anything from. A story about rebirth, Harvard law, and the man who saw her strength before she believed in it herself. She woke up in a body that had not yet learned to be broken. 8 years before she died in a hospital bed, Scarlett Hayes opened her eyes in a cramped college dorm room with a popcorn ceiling and a heater that hissed like it was dying. Her phone showed a message from her boyfriend, Derek Walsh. He was skipping his final exam to drive his first love to an appointment in another state, in another life. She had begged him to stay. She had called him 7 times. She had waited in the rain outside his apartment and watched him drive past her without stopping. She had taken the exam with shaking hands and failed it. She had taken him back when he apologized, and she had spent the next 7 years watching him dismantle everything she had built. But this was not that life. This time, she did not pick up the phone. She did not save him a seat. She did not chase a man who had already chosen someone else. This time, she chose herself. This is the story of what happened next. The alarm went off at 6:47 a.m. Scarlett Hayes opened her eyes and knew immediately that something was wrong. The ceiling was wrong. Not the white hospital ceiling she had stared at for 3 months before the machine stopped. Not the rental apartment ceiling she had moved into after Derek drained their joint account. This was a popcorn ceiling. Cheap. Familiar. Old. The same acoustic texture she had stared at during all-nighters and heartbreaks and lazy Sunday mornings when she was 22. She sat up so fast the room tilted. The dorm room was small. Twin bed against the wall. A desk buried under textbooks. A corkboard covered in index cards and a faded photo of her mother. The radiator hissed in the corner like it had never stopped. Her laptop was open to an unfinished essay on tort law. A half-empty mug of coffee sat next to it, still warm. She grabbed her phone. The date was September 15, 2008. 8 years before she had died. Scarlett's hand went still on the screen. Her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat, in her temples, in the space behind her eyes. She checked the date again, then again. It didn't change. September 15, 2008. The fall semester of her senior year. The semester everything had started to fall apart. In her previous life, she had woken up on this exact morning and found a text from Derek. He was skipping his contract's final to drive Sienna Ross to a doctor's appointment in the next state. Sienna had called him crying. His first love. The girl he had never gotten over. Scarlett had begged him to stay. She had called him 7 times. She had waited outside his apartment in the rain. She had humiliated herself so thoroughly that she still remembered the feeling of rainwater running down her neck while she knocked on his door and he didn't answer. He had gone anyway. She had failed the exam because she couldn't focus. Her GPA dropped. Her Harvard application became a long shot. And Derek had come back to her 2 weeks later, apologized, and she had taken him back because she was too weak to be alone. It was the first domino. The one she had spent the rest of her short life blaming herself for. Scarlett put the phone down. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the desk. At the Harvard law application packet sitting next to her laptop. She had already submitted it. In this life and the last. She had always been good enough. The problem was she had never believed it. Her phone buzzed. Derek's name lit up the screen. She stared at it. 7 years of marriage after that first betrayal. 7 years of him slowly dismantling her confidence while Sienna waited in the wings. 7 years of her working 2 jobs to support his startup, while he transferred their savings to an account she didn't know about. 7 years of her dying a little more each day until the hospital bed felt like the first peace she'd had in a decade. In my previous life, I answered this call. I remembered the sound of his voice, apologetic, practiced, familiar. I need to tell you something. And I had said, I'm listening, even though I already knew what was coming. I had listened to him explain why Sienna needed him more than I did. I had listened, and I had forgiven him, and I had walked into that exam hall 30 minutes late with red eyes and a heart that had already given up. This time, she let it ring. The buzzing stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. She didn't listen to it. Scarlett swung her legs over the edge of the bed. The floor was cold. She stood up slowly, testing the body she had not inhabited in 8 years. Younger knees. No back pain. She walked to the mirror above her desk and looked at herself. 22 years old. Dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. No circles under her eyes yet. No permanent tiredness in her expression. She looked like a girl who had not yet learned how cruel the world could be. But she remembered. She remembered the weight of the oxygen tube on her face. She remembered the nurse who held her hand because no one else was in the room. She remembered the single thought that had gone through her mind as the monitors flatlined. I should have let him go the first time. This time. She would. Scarlett dressed in silence. She pulled on jeans and a sweater, the same ones she had worn on this day in her previous life, though she barely remembered choosing them that time. Her hands moved methodically. Button. Zipper. She tucked her phone into her back pocket without reading the voicemail. She grabbed her laptop, her textbook, and the Harvard Law application packet she had already sent in. The envelope was worn at the edges from how many times she had held it. She did not look at her phone again. She walked out of the dorm room without checking her reflection. The hallway was empty. Early morning light slanted through the windows at the end of the corridor. The building smelled like instant coffee and old carpet. She had walked this hallway 1,000 times in her previous life, but it had never felt like this. Every step felt deliberate. Every breath felt like a choice. She reached the stairwell and stopped. In her previous life, she had taken the stairs 2 at a time, desperate to find Derek before the exam started. She had run. She had fallen on the 3rd step and bloodied her knee. She had limped into the exam hall with a torn stocking and a face stained with tears. She had taken the exam with shaking hands and scored a 63. She looked down at the stairs. Her knee was fine. Her hands were steady. She walked down slowly, 1 step at a time. Not because she was hesitant, because she was in no hurry to stop anyone from making their own mistakes. The exam hall was half full when she arrived. Students hunched over desks, flipping through notes, muttering formulas to themselves. The clock on the wall read 8:52. 8 minutes until the exam started. She walked to her assigned seat, row 3, second from the window. She set down her laptop. She opened the exam booklet. She did not look at the door. The seat next to her was empty. Derek's seat. She had saved it for him. In her previous life, she had put her bag on it to hold it, texted him, "Where are you?" and watched the door until the last possible second. He never came. She had spent the entire exam glancing at the empty chair, her heart twisting, her mind replaying every moment she had failed to be enough for him. This time, she didn't save it. She took her bag off the chair and let it be empty. She didn't care who sat there. No one did. The proctor called for silence. The exam began. Scarlett read the first question. Contracts. Consideration. A case she had studied so thoroughly in her previous life that she could recite the judgment from memory. She had taken this exam twice, once as a devastated 22-year-old, and once during her final year review when she had tried to rebuild her academic record. She knew every trap, every nuance, every answer the professor wanted. She started writing. 3 hours passed without her noticing. She wrote through every question with the precision of someone who had already lived through the consequences of getting it wrong. Question 2 was about promissory estoppel, a case she had lost sleep over in her previous life because Derek had called her 3 times during her study session. She answered it completely. Question 3 was about remedies for breach. She wrote a full analysis, cited 2 secondary sources, and added a footnote about the policy implications. She finished the exam with 15 minutes remaining. She reviewed her answers once, then closed the booklet. She sat still and watched the clock. The second hand moved steadily. She matched her breathing to its rhythm. Her mind was quiet. No anxiety. No anticipation. Just a stillness she had not felt in 8 years. When the proctor called time, she stood up, handed in her exam, and walked out. The hallway was filling with students comparing answers. She walked past them without stopping. Her phone buzzed again. Derek. She silenced it. She stepped outside. The air was cool. The sky was clear. She stood on the steps of the law building and felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt free. Her phone buzzed a third time. She pulled it out. Derek's name. A text. "Where are you? I need to talk to you. It's important." She read the message twice. She noticed her hands were not shaking. In her previous life, her heart would have raced at the sight of his name. She would have been desperate, hopeful, terrified. Now she felt nothing but recognition. She knew exactly what he wanted. She had heard this script before. In her previous life, that text had come after he had already driven Sienna to her appointment. He had wanted to explain himself. She had picked up the phone, cried, forgiven him, and set the first domino in motion. She typed her reply. 3 words. "I'm at my exam." She hit send. Then she put the phone in her pocket and walked back to her dorm. The room was exactly as she had left it. Coffee cold, laptop open, the Harvard packet sitting on the corner of her desk like a promise she had not yet opened. She sat down and pulled it toward her. In her previous life, she had received her Harvard acceptance a week after Derek came back. She had been so relieved to have him again that the acceptance had felt secondary. She had told him first. She had let him talk her into choosing a cheaper school so they could save money together. She had let him convince her that Harvard was too expensive, too far, too ambitious for someone like her. She had believed him. She opened the packet now. The letter inside was dated October 1st, 2008. She still had 3 weeks before it arrived. But she already knew what it would say. She had written the essay herself. She had the grades. She had the score. In both lives, she had been accepted. The difference was what she did with it. She pulled out a notebook. The same notebook Derek had seen her writing in 100 times, but had never bothered to read. She flipped to a clean page and wrote 3 words at the top. This time, me. Then she started planning. Her phone buzzed one last time. She glanced at it. Derek. "I made a mistake. Can we talk?" She put the phone face down on the desk. In my previous life, I would have answered by now. I would have let him explain. I would have made excuses for him. I would have told myself that his first love was a threat I couldn't compete with, and I would have tried harder. In this life, I knew better. He hadn't made a mistake. He had made a choice. And so had I. She picked up her pen and started outlining her semester. Every course, every deadline, every application window. She wrote until her hand cramped, then kept writing. She had 8 months to finish her undergraduate degree, secure her Harvard placement, and build a foundation that no one could take from her. She mapped out her LSAT prep schedule even though she had already scored in the 98th percentile in her previous life. She would take it again. She would score higher. She would leave no margin for error. Fall classes, networking events. The LSAT prep course she had already aced in her previous life but would take again to keep her cover. An internship application at a Boston firm. A savings plan that didn't include a joint account. She was still writing when Maya burst through the door. "Scarlett. Oh my God. Are you okay?" Maya Lynn. Her roommate. Her best friend. The girl who had sat with her in the hospital in her previous life. Who had cried at her funeral. Who had tried to warn her about Derek 100 times and been ignored every single time. Scarlett looked up. Her throat tightened. 8 years. She hadn't seen Maya's face without the weight of grief in 8 years. "I'm fine," she said. "You're fine." Maya dropped her bag. Derek just posted a photo with Sienna Ross at some diner 3 towns over. Everyone is talking about it. They think he skipped the exam for her. "I know. You know." Maya's eyes widened. "And you're just sitting here, taking notes." Scarlett looked down at her notebook. "This time, me." She closed it. "He made his choice," she said. "I made mine." Maya stared at her. "Who are you and what did you do with my best friend?" Scarlett almost smiled. It was the first time she had felt the muscles move in her face in a way that didn't hurt. "I'm the version of me that stopped waiting for him to choose me," she said. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down on the bed across from Scarlett's desk. "Okay," she said. "What do you need?" Scarlett looked at her friend. In her previous life, she had pushed Maya away. She had been too ashamed, too deep in Derek's orbit, too blind to see who had been standing beside her the whole time. This time, She wouldn't. I need to get into Harvard, she said, and I need to do it without him. Maya didn't ask questions. She just nodded. Then let's get started. 3 weeks passed. Scarlett did not call Derek. She did not text him. She did not check his social media or ask Maya what people were saying. She woke up every morning at 6, studied until her eyes burned, ran 3 miles, and repeated the cycle. The first week was the hardest. Derek showed up at her dorm on the 3rd day after the exam. She saw him through the window before he reached the door. He was wearing the jacket she had bought him for his birthday. His hair was messier than usual. He looked like he hadn't slept. She watched him walk up the path. In her previous life, she would have met him at the door. She would have let him pull her into an apology. She would have believed every word. This time, she stayed at her desk. He knocked. She didn't move. Maya opened the door. She's not here. It's her laptop, Derek said. I can see her through the window. Scarlett stood up. She walked to the door. Maya stepped aside. Hi, Derek said. Derek. He shifted his weight. I want to explain what happened. You skipped the exam to drive Sienna to a doctor's appointment. Scarlett said. I know. I was there. I saw your empty seat. I know. I messed up. I should have told you. You did tell me. I chose not to answer. He blinked. What? I chose not to answer your calls. I chose to take my exam. I chose to stop chasing you. The words came out flat. No anger. No hurt. Just fact. Derek stared at her like she had grown a second head. You're breaking up with me. I'm not breaking up with you. I'm accepting that you already made your choice. I'm just making mine. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I thought you loved me. Scarlett looked at him. In her previous life, that sentence would have destroyed her. She would have spent years trying to prove that she did. That his doubt was her failure. That if she just loved him harder, he would stop looking at other women. But she remembered the truth. She had loved him. She had loved him through the late nights, the empty promises, the joint account she had funded with her part-time job while he found himself. She had loved him while he transferred their money to an account she didn't know about. She had loved him right up until the moment the oxygen tube went in and she realized she had been loving someone who had never loved her back. I did love you, she said, but I love myself more now. She closed the door. The click of the latch was louder than she expected. Final. Clean. He didn't knock again. She watched him from the window as he stood on the path for a full minute, then turned and walked away. She watched until he disappeared around the corner. Then she went back to her desk and kept studying. Maya brought her takeout that night. Dumplings from the place around the corner. She set them down on Scarlett's desk without a word. You can't fix the world on an empty stomach, Maya said. Scarlett ate. The dumplings were good. They were salty and hot and exactly what she needed. She ate while Maya scrolled through her phone, narrating campus gossip that Scarlett barely registered. She ate while the sun set outside her window, turning the room orange. She ate while the silence between them became comfortable instead of strained. In her previous life, she had pushed Maya away when she tried to help. She had been too proud, too ashamed, too deep in her own spiral. This time, she let her friend stay. She ate. She listened. And she started to believe that she could do this alone. They tasted like the past she had left behind and the future she was building. The second week, Derek stopped coming. She heard through Maya that he had started posting photos with Sienna openly, dining at expensive restaurants, skipping classes, bragging about a business opportunity. That sounded like a pyramid scheme to anyone with common sense. In her previous life, Scarlett would have felt jealous. She would have scrolled through every photo, compared herself to Sienna, found herself lacking. She would have spiraled. This time, she felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had made the right choice. The first week without Derek felt like learning to breathe again. Scarlett woke up each morning and checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. The absence was strange at first, the silence where his name used to be. She had spent so many years waiting for his texts, reading his silences, interpreting his moods. The quiet felt hollow until she filled it with something else. She filled it with work. She focused on her classes, contracts, torts, constitutional law, the same material she had studied in her previous life. But this time she wasn't reading through tears. She was absorbing, synthesizing, excelling. Her professors noticed. Her grades rose. She applied for the Harvard Law early admission track. She had already submitted her application in her previous life, but she rewrote her personal statement. The old one had been about overcoming obstacles for the people she loved. The new one was about choosing herself. She wrote it in one night. She didn't cry once. The third week, the acceptance letter arrived. It was a thin envelope. Scarlett knew that was a good sign. Thick envelopes meant waitlists or rejection packets with forms to fill out. Thin meant yes. She opened it on her desk. Maya was standing behind her, holding her breath. "Well," Maya shouted. Scarlett read the first line. "Dear Miss Hayes, we are pleased to inform you." She didn't finish. Maya tackled her in a hug. The letter fluttered to the floor. "I knew it," Maya screamed. "I knew it. You're a genius. You're going to Harvard." Scarlett laughed. The sound surprised her. She had forgotten what it felt like to laugh without a catch in her throat. She picked up the letter and read the rest. Full tuition scholarship. Housing offered. Orientation begins August 15th. August 15th. She had 8 months to finish her undergraduate degree, save enough money to survive in Boston, and build a life that didn't include Derek Walsh. She could do it. She had done harder things. She had died alone in a hospital bed with no one but Maya holding her hand. She could move to a new city and start over. The next few months passed in a blur. Scarlett threw herself into her final semester. She took every elective she could fit. She networked with her professors. She lined up a summer internship at a Boston legal clinic. She saved every dollar from her part-time job at the campus library. Derek tried to contact her twice more. Once through a mutual friend who delivered a convoluted message about how Derek missed her and wanted to make things right. The second time through a letter slipped under her door. She read the first sentence. "I know I messed up, but I think we can work through this," and threw it in the trash. The third attempt came through Sienna. Scarlett was at the library when Sienna appeared at her table. No greeting, no introduction, just a woman in expensive boots and a leather jacket looking down at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "You need to stop ignoring him," Sienna said. "He's been a mess since you broke up." Scarlett looked up from her casebook. "I didn't break up with him. He skipped his final exam for you. That was his choice. He feels guilty. Then he should have thought about that before he got in the car." Sienna's jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm not making anything. I'm studying. You should try it." Sienna left without another word. Maya called it a victory. Scarlett called it a waste of time. She closed her casebook and went back to work. She didn't respond to Derek. She didn't respond to Sienna. She didn't respond to the emails, the messages through friends, the carefully orchestrated coincidences where he happened to be at the same coffee shop. She stopped looking for him in crowds. She stopped expecting his name on her phone. She stopped caring. In her previous life, I would have analyzed every word of that letter. I would have shown it to Maya. I would have debated whether he really meant it, whether I should give him another chance, whether I was being too harsh. In this life, I didn't analyze. I didn't debate. I just moved on. Graduation came in May. Scarlett walked across the stage in a black gown and accepted her summa cum laude honors. Maya cheered from the audience. Her mother had flown in for the ceremony, a woman who had worked double shifts her whole life to give Scarlett a chance at something better. "Your father would be so proud," her mother said after the ceremony, holding the program like it was made of gold. Scarlett hugged her. She didn't correct her mother's grammar or tell her that her father had died when she was 12 and probably wouldn't have understood what summa cum laude meant anyway. She just held on. "I did it, Mom. You did it," her mother said. "Now go do the rest." June and July were a countdown. Scarlett packed her dorm room into 2 suitcases and a backpack. She sold her textbooks. She gave her winter coat to Maya. She said goodbye to the campus she had spent 4 years on and felt nothing but forward momentum. The bus to Boston left at 7:00 a.m. on August 10th. Maya was already there. She had landed a job at a tech startup in Cambridge and found them a small apartment near the Harvard campus. They would be roommates again. Scarlett hadn't asked. Maya had just done it. "I'm not letting you go to a new city alone," Maya had said. "You'll forget to eat and pass out in the library." Scarlett boarded the bus. She found a window seat. She did not look back. The ride to Boston was 5 hours. She spent it reviewing the course catalog for her first semester and reading the syllabus for contracts, the first class she would attend at Harvard Law. The syllabus listed the teaching assistant, a name she didn't recognize, Adrian Chase. She read the name twice. Something about it felt significant. She couldn't place it. In her previous life, she had never made it to Harvard. She had never sat in a Harvard Law classroom. She had never met anyone named Adrian Chase. But the name stayed in her mind. She closed the syllabus and looked out the window. The skyline of Boston was appearing on the horizon. This was a new life. She had earned it. And she was going to make every second count. The bus pulled into South Station at 12:15 p.m. Scarlett stepped off with her 2 suitcases and her backpack. The station was crowded. People in suits. People with children. People who looked like they belonged in a city that had never stopped moving. She stood in the middle of the terminal and let the noise wash over her. "In my previous life, I never got here. I was accepted, but I never made it past the orientation packet. Derek's fraud. Sienna's sabotage. The debt I didn't know I was carrying, it all stopped me before I started. In this life, I was standing in the terminal. My acceptance letter was in my bag. My scholarship was confirmed. My apartment was waiting." She picked up her suitcases and started walking. The Harvard campus was everything she had imagined and nothing she had prepared for. Red brick buildings. Green lawns. Students walking in clusters, carrying books and laptops, and the confidence of people who had always known they belonged. Scarlett felt small. Not in the way she used to feel small around Derek, like she was shrinking to fit someone else's expectations, but in the way that reminded her she had room to grow. She found her way to the law school registration desk. A woman with silver hair and reading glasses checked her in. Scarlett Hayes. The woman read from the list. "Summa cum laude from state." "Impressive. Thank you. You'll be in Professor Hartwell's contracts section. Room 204. Orientation starts tomorrow at 9. Scarlett took her orientation packet and walked toward the law building. The corridors were lined with portraits of judges and scholars. The floors were polished marble. The air smelled like old books and new beginnings. She found room 204. The door was open. She stepped inside. The room was empty except for one person. A man was standing at the front of the lecture hall, arranging papers on the lectern. He was tall, dark hair, slightly disheveled, a black blazer over a simple white shirt. He didn't look up when she entered. Scarlett stopped at the doorway. "Is this contracts? First period. Room 204. Tomorrow at 9. His voice was low, even. He didn't look up. "I know. I was just looking." Now he looked up. His eyes were dark, sharp. He studied her for a second, not the way men looked at women, but the way a chess player assessed a new opponent. "Looking at what?" She didn't flinch. "At where I'll be sitting for the next year." Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. Not quite nothing. "Front row. Center. That's where the people who want to be challenged sit." She looked at the front row. "Center seat. Good sight lines. Thanks for the tip." "Don't thank me yet." Hartwell cold calls. Center seat gets the hardest questions. She met his eyes. "I'll be ready." She turned and walked out before he could respond. She didn't look back, but she felt his gaze on her back for half a second before she rounded the corner. She walked out of the law building into the late afternoon sun. The campus was golden. The air was warm. She had been in Boston for less than an hour and she had already met someone who looked at her like she might be worth remembering. She didn't know his name. She only knew he was tall, dark-eyed, and standing at the front of room 204. Maya was waiting for her at the apartment with takeout and a plan. "First day of Harvard. We're celebrating. Then we're meal prepping for the entire semester because I know you. And you will forget to eat." Scarlett laughed. The sound was getting easier. She ate dinner with Maya. She unpacked her suitcases. She hung her single nice blazer in the closet. She set out her notebook, her pens, and her copy of the contract's syllabus. She stared at Adrian Chase's name for a long moment. Adrian Chase. She had a feeling she would learn his name tomorrow. And she had a feeling it would matter. Tomorrow, she would sit in the center seat. And she would be ready. Orientation morning arrived with gray Cambridge light and the sound of cars on the wet street. Scarlett had barely slept. Not from nerves, from anticipation. She had spent 8 years waiting for this day. Even if the version of her that had died in that hospital bed had never believed she would reach it. The walk to Harvard Law took 15 minutes. Scarlett had been awake since 6. She had laid out her clothes the night before, a simple black blazer, a white blouse, dark pants. Nothing flashy, nothing apologetic. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman who belonged. The walk to Harvard Law took 15 minutes. She passed students in Harvard gear, parents taking photos, a man in a suit arguing with his phone. The air smelled like rain and ambition. She let herself feel the weight of the moment. She had earned this. The law school lobby was packed. Students pressed against the registration tables, collecting orientation packets and name tags. Scarlett found her section assignment, Section A, Professor Hartwell's contracts class, and followed the flow of bodies into the auditorium. A woman in her 50s stood at the podium. Silver hair cut sharply at the jaw. Dark glasses pushed up like a headband. She did not smile at the room. "Welcome to Harvard Law," she said. Her voice carried without a microphone. "I am Professor Elaine Hartwell. This is contracts. If you are here to coast, the door is behind you. If you are here to learn, sit down and open your casebooks." The room went silent. Students sat. Scarlett found a seat in the third row. Not the center, she was saving that for Professor Hartwell's class specifically, but close enough to see the front clearly. Professor Hartwell did not introduce the course. She did not hand out a syllabus or explain the grading structure. She opened her casebook and began. Hadley v. Baxendale. "Who can tell me what this case stands for?" Hands went up. She picked a student in the front row. He answered competently. She nodded once and moved to the next question. This was how Harvard Law worked. Cold calls. No warning. No mercy. Scarlett had known this. She had read about it. She had prepared for it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. Her palms were damp against the cover of her casebook. She kept her breathing steady. A student in the second row fumbled through an answer about foreseeability. Professor Hartwell let him finish. Then said, "That is incorrect. Read the case again tonight. Tomorrow, I will ask you again." The student's face went red. The room went quieter. Scarlett watched Professor Hartwell move through the room, question by question, student by student. She did not praise. She did not soften. She asked, listened, and moved on. Scarlett waited. Her turn would come. The first class ended at 10:30. Scarlett gathered her things and stood to leave. "Ms. Hayes." She turned. Professor Hartwell was looking at her from the podium. "Your personal statement. The one about choosing yourself. I read it during the admissions review. It stayed with me." Scarlett did not know what to say. "Thank you, Professor." Professor Hartwell nodded. "Do not waste it." She turned and walked out. Scarlett stood in the empty auditorium for a long moment. She had come to Harvard expecting to be invisible. She had not expected to be remembered. The second class of the day was legal research and writing. She found the room, took a seat in the middle, and let the lecture wash over her. The professor was younger than Hartwell, energetic, prone to tangents about his own time as a law clerk. Scarlett took notes on the relevant parts and let the rest drift past. She answered when called on, once, about shepherdizing case law. Her answer was correct. The professor moved on without comment. She did not stand out. She did not need to. The afternoon was orientation events, networking receptions, group activities designed to force strangers into conversation. Scarlett collected business cards and shook hands and smiled until her face ached. She told the same story about her background 3 different times, each version slightly more polished than the last. She answered the same questions. Where did you go to undergrad? What made you choose Harvard? Do you know what kind of law you want to practice? Until the answers became automatic. She remembered the names of 3 people. A woman from California who wanted to do human rights law and spoke with the kind of certainty that only came from never having been tested. A man from Chicago who talked too much and laughed too loudly and was clearly more nervous than he let on. And a quiet student standing in the corner, cup of coffee untouched, watching the room like he was taking notes nobody else could see. That third person was the one she noticed. He was tall, dark-haired. He stood against the wall with a cup of coffee he had not drunk. His eyes moved across the room like he was cataloging everyone in it. It was the man from room 204. She watched him from across the room. He did not approach anyone. No one approached him. He stood alone and seemed perfectly comfortable there. She looked away before he caught her staring. The reception ended at 6. Scarlett walked back to the apartment with a stack of flyers and a mild headache. Maya was already home, cooking something that smelled like garlic and ginger. "How was day 1? Maya asked. "I was remembered by my contracts professor." "That's good." "Right. Unclear." Maya laughed. "You'll figure it out. Eat." They ate dinner together. Scarlett told Maya about the cold calls. The silent man from room 204. The weight of being in a room full of people who had all been the smartest person in their high school. "Just be the smartest person in this room," Maya said. "I don't know if I am." "Neither do they. But they'll believe it if you act like it." Scarlett smiled. Maya had a way of reducing things to their simplest form. The next morning, Scarlett walked into contracts and sat in the center seat. The room filled around her. Students settled into their chairs. The clock hit 9. Professor Hartwell walked in. Behind her, the man from room 204 followed. He carried a stack of papers and a leather briefcase. He set them on the side table and stood at the edge of the room. "For those of you who missed the syllabus," Professor Hartwell said, "this is Adrian Chase. He is your teaching assistant for this section. He will be running your weekly study groups and grading your midterms. Do not try to charm him. It will not work." A few students laughed. Adrian Chase did not react. He looked up. His eyes moved across the room. They stopped on Scarlett. Center seat. Front row. She saw recognition flicker across his face. Not surprise. Confirmation. Like he had been expecting her to be there. He nodded once. Small. Barely visible. She nodded back. And then the class began. Professor Hartwell launched into consideration doctrine. She broke it down like a surgeon dissecting a specimen, precise, methodical, leaving no room for ambiguity. She explained the bargain theory of consideration, the difference between a gift and a contract, the historical evolution from formalist to realist approaches. The room was silent. Every student was writing. Then she closed her book. The class held their breath. "Ms. Hayes, center seat. You handled Hadley v. Baxendale in your undergraduate studies. Tell me, does the rule in Hadley apply to the consideration analysis of a service contract?" Scarlett felt the weight of 40 eyes on her. She took a breath. The Hadley rule addresses consequential damages, not consideration. The two are separate inquiries. Consideration asks whether there was a bargain for exchange. Hadley asks what damages flow from a breach. They serve different functions in contract analysis. She paused. Professor Hartwell did not interrupt. That was a good sign. However, the policy logic of Hadley, limiting liability to foreseeable risks, could inform a consideration analysis if the alleged consideration was premised on an unforeseeable contingency. In that case, the court might find the consideration inadequate not because the exchange was uneven, but because the risk was not properly allocated at formation. Professor Hartwell was silent for a moment. Then she did something that made the entire room shift. She smiled. "That is the correct answer," she said, "and it is the most complete answer I have received from a first-year student in 5 years." She turned back to the board and continued the lecture. Scarlett exhaled. She did not look around to see who was watching, but she felt something shift in the room. She was not invisible anymore. The lecture ended. Students filed out. Scarlett packed her bag slowly, letting the crowd thin. "Ms. Hayes." She looked up. Adrian Chase was standing at the end of her row. "Professor Hartwell doesn't smile. That was the first time I've seen it. I don't know if that's good or bad." "It's good." He paused. "Your analysis was solid. But you missed one layer. She raised an eyebrow. The Hadley rule, applied to consideration, only works if the contingency was within the contemplation of both parties at formation. You assumed bilateral knowledge. In reality, most consideration disputes involve asymmetric information. If you account for that, your argument holds better under cross-examination. She considered this. So I made the defendant's case stronger than it needed to be. You made it clean. That's harder than making it aggressive. The best advocates make the other side's argument fair, then show why they're still wrong. He turned to leave. Mr. Chase, she said. He stopped. My name is Scarlett. He looked at her. I know. He walked out. Scarlett stood in the empty row and watched him go. He had corrected her analysis in front of an empty room. Not to humiliate her, to make her better. She did not know how she knew the difference. She just did. Her phone buzzed. Maya. How was day 2? Scarlett looked at the door where Adrian Chase had disappeared. Interesting. She typed. She walked out of the classroom and into the Cambridge afternoon. The sky was clearing. The air was fresh. She had been at Harvard for 2 days and had already been challenged by a professor, corrected by a TA, and remembered by name. The rest of the day passed in fragments. A torts lecture about duty of care. A legal writing workshop where she submitted her first memo. A lunch she ate alone in the courtyard, watching students form groups she was not yet part of. She did not mind the solitude. She had spent most of her past life surrounded by people and feeling completely alone. Derek beside her but miles away. Colleagues who smiled to her face and gossiped behind her back. The solitude of Harvard was different. It was chosen. It was hers. In her previous life, she had been surrounded by people and felt completely alone. Eating lunch by herself while reading a case was a different kind of loneliness. This one did not hurt. She went home at 6. Maya was out. The apartment was quiet. Scarlett made noodles, ate them standing over the sink, and opened her casebook for the next day's reading. The work was not hard. The material was familiar. She had studied most of it in her previous life. The difference was the context. She was not reading to pass. She was reading to master. She wrote notes in the margins. She flagged questions she wanted to ask. She prepared for Professor Hartwell's next cold call like she was preparing for a trial. She fell asleep at midnight with her casebook open on her chest. The light was still on. She did not dream. The next morning, she woke before her alarm. She showered. She dressed. She walked to Harvard Law in the dark before sunrise. The campus was empty. The air was cold. She liked it this way, before everyone else arrived. When the buildings belonged to her, she found a seat in the contracts classroom. Not the center, that seat she would save for the class where Adrian Chase would be present. She did not analyze why she was saving it. She just knew. She sat in the 3rd row, near the window, where she could see the door. Students trickled in. A group of 3 sat behind her, discussing a party they had attended. A man with a coffee stain on his shirt sat to her left. The room smelled like nervous energy and expensive cologne. She opened her casebook. She reviewed her notes from Professor Hartwell's first lecture. She underlined a sentence about promissory estoppel and wrote a question mark in the margin. And she waited. She had a feeling this was only the beginning. But she did not dwell on it. She had learned not to look too far ahead. The past had taught her that the future could change in an instant. All she could control was the next class, the next case, the next sentence she wrote in her notebook. She wrote until her hand cramped, then switched to typing. She organized her notes by topic, then by case, then by jurisdiction. The work was grounding. It was something she could hold. When she finally closed her laptop, the clock read 11:47 p.m. She had a 7 a.m. class tomorrow. She would sleep 4 hours. It was enough. The Friday before study groups began was the longest day of the week. Scarlett had 3 classes, a writing workshop, and a meeting with her academic advisor. She moved through each one mechanically, her mind half focused on the email that would arrive any minute with her group assignment. She spent the weekend preparing. She read the force majeure materials 3 times. She researched the minority interpretation from California. She wrote and rewrote her opening statement until she could deliver it from memory. By Sunday night, she knew the file better than she knew her own class schedule. She had even dreamed about the case, the two parties arguing in a courtroom that looked like her undergraduate lecture hall. She told herself it did not matter. 6 groups. 6 TAs. She had a 1 in 6 chance of being assigned to Adrian Chase's group. Those were not remarkable odds. But she had been thinking about him all week. Not in the way she had thought about Derek in her previous life, with anxiety and need. This was different. He was a challenge she wanted to meet. He corrected her, then explained why. He challenged her, then showed her the way through. She had not met anyone like him before. When the email arrived at 3:47 p.m., she opened it with steady hands. Group 3. TA. Adrian Chase. She read it twice. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the silence of the library. It could be a coincidence. There were 6 groups and 6 TAs. She had a 1 in 6 chance. But she did not believe in coincidences. Not anymore. She spent the weekend preparing. She read the force majeure materials 3 times. She researched the minority interpretation from California. She wrote and rewrote her opening statement. By Sunday night, she knew the file better than she knew her own schedule. Maya noticed. "You're studying for a study group. It's a practice session." Scarlett did not look up. "I know. You're nervous." "I'm not nervous." Maya sat on the couch and studied her. "You're nervous. You get quiet when you're nervous. And you're very quiet right now." Scarlett closed her book. "I'm not nervous. I'm curious. About the TA. About whether I can keep up." Maya smiled. "You can. You always could. The only person you ever struggled to keep up with was yourself." Scarlett did not answer. But she knew Maya was right. The study group meetings came out on Friday. Scarlett opened the email in the library and scanned the list. Section A had been divided into 6 groups. Each group was assigned a TA. She found her name. Group 3. TA. Adrian Chase. She stared at the screen. It could be a coincidence. There were 6 groups and 6 TAs. She had a 1 in 6 chance. But she did not believe in coincidences. Not anymore. The first study group meeting was Monday evening, 7 p.m. In the library basement. Scarlett arrived early. The room was small, 4 chairs around a rectangular table, a whiteboard on the wall, a window that looked out at ground level. She could see feet walking past. Adrian was already there. He was writing something on the whiteboard. He did not turn around when she entered. "The prompt is on the table," he said. She picked it up. A contract dispute simulation. 2 parties. Conflicting interpretations of a force majeure clause. She was assigned to represent the tenant. The other 2 group members arrived together. A woman named Priya, who introduced herself with a firm handshake and a business background. A man named James, who seemed nervous and talked too fast. Adrian sat at the head of the table. He did not introduce himself. He started the session without preamble. "Priya, you're the landlord. James, you're the arbitrator. Scarlett, you're the tenant. You have 40 minutes to prepare." Then Priya and Scarlett argue. James decides. "I observe." He leaned back in his chair. That was all. Scarlett opened the file and started reading. The simulation was well designed. The force majeure clause was ambiguous, deliberately so. The tenant had missed 3 payments because of a supplier shutdown. The landlord argued the shutdown was foreseeable and should have been planned for. The tenant argued it was an act of God beyond their control. Scarlett read the clause 3 times. She found the ambiguity. A single phrase. "Events beyond reasonable control." That had been interpreted differently in 6 different jurisdictions. She started building her argument. 20 minutes in, Adrian stood up and walked around the table. He stopped behind James, looked at his notes, and said nothing. He moved to Priya's side. She was writing a bullet list. He watched for 10 seconds, then moved on. He stopped behind Scarlett. She was writing her argument in full sentences, not bullet points. She was citing cases. "You're over-preparing," he said. She looked up. "I'm making sure I have precedent. You have 40 minutes. You need a structure, not a transcript. Write the first sentence and the last sentence. Everything in between, you'll find when you're standing." She looked at her notes. He was right. She was writing a speech, not an argument. She crossed out everything except 2 lines. The first sentence of her opening, the last sentence of her closing. She spent the remaining 20 minutes memorizing the facts. At 7:40, Adrian called time. Priya went first. She was polished. She had numbers. She argued that the supplier shutdown was industry standard knowledge and the tenant should have planned for it. Then it was Scarlett's turn. She stood up. She did not look at her notes. Force majeure clauses exist to allocate risk for events that no reasonable party could have prevented. She said, "The question is not whether my client should have anticipated a shutdown. The question is whether the specific cause of that shutdown, a regulatory change with 36 hours notice, was within the zone of control my client reasonably exercised." She argued for 4 minutes. She used the ambiguity in the clause. She cited the minority interpretation from California. She acknowledged the weakness in her position. Her client had no backup supplier, and argued that the clause existed precisely for that gap. When she finished, Adrian stood up. "James," he said, "decision." James looked between them. I think the landlord has a stronger position on the plain language. But the tenant's argument about the regulatory change is compelling. Make a decision." "Tenant. I rule for the tenant." Adrian nodded. "Correct." Priya frowned. "Why?" "The plain language supports the landlord." Adrian turned to the whiteboard. He drew a line. Then another line. Contract law is not about what the words say. It's about what the words were intended to achieve. The force majeure clause in this contract was drafted by the landlord's attorney. The ambiguity was intentional. They left themselves room to deny claims. But the regulatory change was not foreseeable. Even the landlord's risk assessment didn't include it. He turned back to them. "Priya, your argument was clean but rigid. You relied on the text without considering the equities. Scarlett, you found the gap and exploited it. That's the difference between a good lawyer and an effective one." He sat down. The session continued for another hour. They worked through 3 more problems. Each time, Adrian pushed them harder. Each time, Scarlett found the gap. By the end, she was exhausted, and she had never felt more alive. The session ended at 9. Priya and James packed up quickly. Scarlett stayed to organize her notes. Adrian was erasing the whiteboard. His back to her. "You didn't need to put me in this group," she said. He stopped erasing. "No. Why did you?" He turned. "Because Professor Hartwell said you were the one to watch." She felt the words land somewhere in her chest. "I don't know if that's a compliment or a burden." "It's both. That's what Harvard is." He turned back to the whiteboard. She watched him erase the last line. The room was quiet except for the squeak of the marker. "Mr. Chase," she said. Adrian, thank you. For the correction yesterday. And for this." He looked at her. His expression was unreadable. But his voice was softer than she had heard it before. "You don't need to thank me. You just need to keep showing up." She nodded. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. "Scarlett." She stopped. "The center seat. You earned it. But don't get comfortable. Hartwell will come for you again." She smiled. "I know." She walked out of the room and up the basement stairs. The night air was cool. The campus was quiet. She stood on the path and let herself feel the small, dangerous thing growing in her chest. She was not afraid of it. She was afraid of how much she wanted it. The week passed in a rhythm. Classes, study groups, reading, sleep. Scarlett fell into the routine like she had been doing it her whole life. She found the library corner that became hers. She learned the fastest route between buildings. She memorized the voice of the barista at the coffee shop near the law school. And she saw Adrian Chase everywhere. In the hallway between classes. At the front of the study room. Once at the coffee shop. Reading a case file with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold. He did not acknowledge her outside of class. He did not need to. His presence was a constant she was learning to navigate. She came to recognize the shape of his presence. He walked with his shoulders straight but his head slightly down. Like he was always reading something invisible. He never ate during the day. She saw him skip lunch 3 times. He drank black coffee from a thermos that had faded Harvard branding from 3 years ago. He spoke only when necessary. On Wednesday, she saw him in the hallway after her torts lecture. He was standing outside Professor Hartwell's office. a file in his hand. Waiting. She walked past. He did not look up, but she felt the air shift as she passed him. Like the space between them had a gravity she could not name. On Thursday, she stayed late in the library. The building was almost empty. She was reading for Friday's class when footsteps stopped at her table. She looked up. Adrian was standing there with 2 cups of coffee. "You've been here for 8 hours," he said. "How do you know?" "The librarian told me. She's worried you're going to fall asleep on the books." Scarlett glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. She had lost track. She rubbed her eyes. "I didn't notice." He set one of the cups in front of her. "Black. No sugar. You seem like someone who drinks it that way." She wrapped her hands around the cup. The warmth spread through her fingers. "How do I seem like someone?" He sat down across from her. "You don't waste time on things that don't matter. Coffee is fuel, not pleasure." "That's surprisingly observant. I'm a lawyer. Observation is the job." She took a sip. The coffee was good. Strong. Bitter. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "Grading. On a Thursday night. Midterms are in 3 weeks. I want to calibrate the grading curve before the students take the exam. Fairness requires preparation." She looked at him. "You care about being fair. Is that surprising? Most people care about being right." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something she would not forget. "My father was accused of fraud. The prosecution didn't care about being fair. They cared about a conviction. I learned that fairness and rightness are not the same thing. One is a standard. The other is a weapon." The words hung between them. Scarlett did not ask what happened. She did not say she was sorry. She just nodded. "Then I hope you grade fairly," she said. He almost smiled. "I always do." They sat in silence for a few minutes. 2 people drinking coffee in an empty library. The clock ticked. The fluorescent lights hummed. Scarlett closed her casebook. "I should go. Maya will send a search party." She stood up. He stood with her. "Scarlett." "Yes." "The argument you made Monday. The minority interpretation you cited, from California. Do you know why that case was decided that way? The judge believed the clause should be interpreted against the drafter. That's the rule. But that's not the reason." He paused. "The judge's son died in a factory shutdown caused by a regulatory change. He knew what it felt like to be on the wrong side of an ambiguous clause. The law gave him cover. His experience gave him conviction." Scarlett absorbed this. "You're saying the text is never neutral." "I'm saying the text is always written by someone. And someone always gets hurt when it's applied without context." She looked at him. In the low light of the library, she saw something in his face she had not noticed before. A weariness. A depth. The weight of someone who had been on the wrong side of a system that claimed to be neutral. She understood that weight. She carried it too. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Scarlett." She walked out of the library into the cool night, the coffee still warm in her hands. The walk home took 10 minutes. She took a longer route, past the lit windows of the law school, past the empty courtyard where she had eaten lunch alone. The coffee stayed warm longer than she expected. She drank it slowly, letting the bitterness settle on her tongue. He had brought her coffee. He had sat with her. He had told her about his father. She did not know what to do with this information. In her previous life, she had learned that men only showed vulnerability when they wanted something. Derek had cried about Sienna while Scarlett held him, and she had thought his tears meant he trusted her. She had been wrong. His tears meant he needed an audience. Adrian had not cried. He had stated a fact. "My father was accused of fraud." No self-pity. No expectation of sympathy. Just an observation, offered like evidence in a case she was not sure she was judging. She did not know what to make of him. She let herself into the apartment. Maya was asleep. The living room light was on. A note on the counter. "Food in the fridge. You better have eaten today, M." Scarlett smiled. She ate the cold noodles Maya had left for her. She changed into her pajamas. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling was not popcorn textured. It was smooth white drywall. A different ceiling from a different life. But the feeling was the same, the sense that something was shifting beneath her feet. And she was not sure whether to brace herself or let it carry her. She did not look back at the library, but she felt him watching. and she was not ready to examine what that meant. October arrived in Cambridge with cold rain and shorter days. Scarlett had been at Harvard for 6 weeks. The initial feeling of being an imposter had faded into something quieter, a steady awareness that she belonged here. Even if she still sometimes felt like she was waiting to be discovered, she had found her rhythm. Morning classes, afternoon study sessions, evening study group with Adrian. The pattern was predictable, and she liked it that way. Predictable meant safe. Predictable meant she was in control. But October was the month everything shifted. The leaves turned and fell. The days got shorter, and Derek Walsh stepped back into her life like he had never left. She had not heard from Derek since she closed the door on him in September. She had not thought about him. Not deliberately, but sometimes, between classes, she would catch a glimpse of a man with the same build, the same walk, and her stomach would tighten before her brain caught up. The reflex faded with each week, but it was still there, buried beneath the surface of her new life. Then one Thursday evening, she came home to find him standing outside her apartment building. He was leaning against the wall near the entrance, hands in his coat pockets, collar turned up against the rain. He looked thinner than she remembered. His jaw was sharper. His eyes found her the moment she turned the corner. Scarlett. She stopped walking. The distance between them was 15 feet. It felt like a lifetime. Derek. He pushed off the wall. You look good. Harvard suits you. She did not answer. She waited. I know I shouldn't be here, he said. I know I messed up. But I've been thinking about you. About what you said. About us. There is no us. I know. I know. He ran a hand through his wet hair. But I'm in Boston now. I got a job. Well, more of an opportunity. Sienna has connections here. I'm trying to build something. Scarlett heard the name Sienna and felt nothing. That was progress. Why are you here, Derek? He looked at her. Because I wanted to see if you were okay. I'm fine. You look more than fine. You look like you don't need anyone. She heard the edge in his voice. Not concern. Accusation. He had come because her independence bothered him. I don't need you, she said. That's what you're trying to say. He did not deny it. That's what you can't stand. She continued. You left me. I was supposed to fall apart. Instead, I got into Harvard. I moved to Boston. I'm doing better than I ever did with you. And you can't stand it. His jaw tightened. That's not true. It is true. You came here to see if I was still carrying a torch for you. I'm not. Go home. Derek. She walked past him toward the door. She had her keys out. She was 3 feet from safety. He grabbed her arm. The grip was tight. Familiar. He had held her this way 100 times in her previous life, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make her stop, to make her listen, to make her stay. Scarlett. Wait. Let go of me. She did not say it. A man's voice did. Low. Controlled. Absolutely certain. The voice came from behind her. Low. Controlled. Dangerous. She turned. Adrian was standing on the sidewalk, 20 feet away. He was still in his teaching clothes, dark blazer, white shirt, no tie. Rain was collecting on his shoulders. He looked at Derek like Derek was a problem he was about to solve. Derek released her arm. Who are you? Someone who's asking you to step away from her. She's my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend. Scarlett said. And he's right. You need to leave. Derek looked between them. His face cycled through expressions, confusion, anger, something that looked like hurt. He was not used to being dismissed. In their entire relationship, Scarlett had been the one who chased, who apologized, who tried harder. This version of her did not fit the script he had written. Then he settled on a smile that did not reach his eyes. It was the smile he used when he was losing an argument and wanted to pretend he was walking away by choice. Okay, I get it. You've moved on. He stepped back. But she doesn't know you. She doesn't know what you're really like. Nobody does. He said the last sentence to Adrian. Scarlett did not understand what it meant, but she saw Adrian's expression shift. A crack. A fracture. Then it sealed again. Good night, Derek, she said. Derek looked at her. This isn't over. He turned and walked away. The rain swallowed him before he reached the corner. Scarlett stood in the doorway. her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. Adrian had not moved. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine." He grabbed your arm. "I know. If he comes back, you should tell someone." She looked at him. His face was unreadable, but his hands were in his pockets, and she noticed they were clenched. "I will," she said. "Thank you." He nodded. He turned to leave. "Adrian." He stopped. "How did you know where I live?" He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't. I was walking home. I live 2 blocks away." She had not known that. She had not thought about where he lived. "Oh, good night, Scarlett." "Good night." He walked away. She watched him until he disappeared into the rain. Then she went inside. Maya was in the kitchen. She took one look at Scarlett's face and put down the knife she was holding. "What happened?" "Derek is in Boston." Maya's face hardened. "I'll kill him." He grabbed my arm. Adrian showed up. Derek left. Adrian showed up. "Your TA." He was walking home. "He lives nearby." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Convenient." "It wasn't like that." "Sure it wasn't." Maya went back to cutting vegetables. "But I'm glad someone was there. You shouldn't have to deal with him alone." Scarlett sat down at the kitchen table. Her hands were still cold from the rain. "I don't think he's done," she said. "Then we make sure he knows he can't touch you." Scarlett looked at her friend. In her previous life, she had faced Derek alone. She had no one to stand between her and his manipulations. This time, she had Maya. She had Adrian. She had a life that did not revolve around him. She was not the same woman he had left. And he was about to find out. That night, after Maya went to bed, Scarlett sat at her desk and changed every password she owned. Email, bank accounts, student portal, social media. She used a password generator and wrote them down on a piece of paper she folded into her wallet. She would memorize them by the end of the week. Until then, they were safe. She also did something she had never done before. She opened a new bank account in her name only. She transferred the money she had saved from her part-time job, $3,000, carefully accumulated over months of tutoring undergraduate students. It was not much, but it was hers. Derek had no access to it. Derek did not even know it existed. In her previous life, she had kept nothing separate. Every account was joint. Every dollar was shared. When Derek drained them, she had nothing left, not even the money to fight back. This time, she had a safety net. Small, but real. She closed her laptop at midnight. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. 2 weeks passed. Scarlett did not see Derek again, but she felt his presence like a low-grade fever. She started looking over her shoulder. She checked her email login history every morning. She saved screenshots of all her account activity. She also saw Sienna once. It was at a cafe near the law school. Sienna was sitting at a corner table with a man in a suit, laughing too loudly at something he said. A Harvard alumni badge was clipped to her jacket. Scarlett noticed the badge did not have the right holographic seal. She did not confront Sienna. She just took a photo with her phone and saved it in a folder labeled Evidence. She was learning to collect, not react. She started looking over her shoulder when she walked home. She changed her route twice, first to avoid the cafe where he had grabbed her arm. Then again when she realized she was building her life around avoiding someone who had no right to occupy her thoughts. She told herself it was precaution, not fear, but she caught herself checking the lock on her apartment door twice before bed. She stopped walking home alone after dark. She made Maya text her when she got home from work. The worst part was the anger. Not at Derek, at herself. She had built a new life. She had moved on. And one encounter on a rainy sidewalk had made her feel small again. She hated that he still had that power over her, even after everything she had done to escape him. She threw herself into her work. Contracts, torts, legal writing. She stayed at the library until it closed. She read ahead in 3 classes. She wrote outlines that were more detailed than the professor's lecture notes. The work was her armor. As long as she was working, she did not have to think about him. But the armor had cracks, and Derek knew exactly where to strike. Then she got an email from the career office. Her application for the spring internship at Chen & Associates had a problem. The recommendation letter from her undergraduate dean had been flagged. The dean had allegedly withdrawn it. Scarlett read the email 3 times. Then she called the dean's office. Dean Morrison's office. This is Scarlett Hayes. I'm a former student. I was told my recommendation letter for a Harvard internship was withdrawn. One moment. Please. She waited. The receptionist came back. Dean Morrison is not available right now, but I can confirm that a withdrawal request was received from your account. My account. Your student email. The request came through 2 days ago. Scarlett's blood went cold. She knew that email password. Derek knew it too. He had set up the account during freshman orientation. She had never changed the password because she had never thought to. In her previous life, he had used that access to read her private emails. She had found out years later, when it was too late. This time, he had used it to destroy her opportunity. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. She sat in the library for an hour, staring at her laptop, not seeing anything. She had proof of nothing. Derek would deny it. The career office would see it as a misunderstanding. Her internship, the one she needed to build her career, would be gone. She thought about calling Maya. She thought about going to the career office and explaining, walking in, telling them the truth, hoping they believed her over a system that had no reason to trust a first-year student from a state school. She thought about doing nothing and accepting the loss. She had lost opportunities before. She had learned to absorb setbacks without letting them break her. She could find another internship. She could rebuild. She had done it before. But this was different. Derek had not won because he was smarter. He had won because he had access to a password she had forgotten to change. A password from a lifetime ago. A password she had given him when she trusted him. Trust. That was the word that burned. She sat in the library for another hour, staring at her laptop, her hands cold, her mind spinning through options. She could confront Derek. She could report him without proof. She could give up and find another path. Or she could ask for help. She thought about Adrian's voice on the night Derek grabbed her arm. If he comes back, you should tell someone. He had not said it like a suggestion. He had said it like a promise. Like if she told him, he would do something about it. She opened her laptop. She found Adrian's email in the course directory. She stared at it for a long minute. Her cursor hovered over the compose button. Her hands were damp. She had not asked for help in years. In her previous life, she had learned that asking meant showing weakness. Showing weakness meant giving Derek ammunition. She had stopped asking anyone for anything. But this was not her previous life. And Adrian was not Derek. She typed. Deleted. Typed again. Something happened. I don't know who else to ask. If you have time tomorrow, I could use your advice. She hit send before she could change her mind. She closed her laptop. Her heart was beating too fast. She had just asked a man she barely knew for help. She had no idea what she was doing. Adrian replied in 11 minutes. Langdale Hall. Room 310, 7 a.m. Don't be late. Scarlett arrived at 6:55. The building was empty. Room 310 was a small office with a window that faced the courtyard. A single desk. 2 chairs. A bookshelf crammed with casebooks. Adrian was already there. A cup of coffee in his hand. You're early, he said. You said don't be late. He almost smiled. Sit. She sat. She told him everything. The internship application she had spent 3 weeks perfecting. The recommendation letter from Dean Morrison that she had carefully requested and followed up on. The email notification that it had been withdrawn. Her student email password that she had shared with Derek during freshman orientation and forgotten to change. The sinking feeling in her stomach when she realized what he had done. Adrian listened without interrupting. His face gave nothing away. He did not nod. He did not frown. He just listened, his coffee cooling on the desk between them. When she finished, he set down his coffee. The career office will want proof before they reinstate the letter. Do you have access to your email login history? I don't know. Check. Most university email systems log IP addresses and timestamps. If the withdrawal request came from a different IP than yours, that's evidence. She had not thought of that. She had been too busy panicking. I'll check. Do it now. She opened her laptop. She navigated to the email settings. It took her 10 minutes to find the login history. She scrolled through the records. Her logins. Harvard Library. Her apartment. The law school. The withdrawal request. IP address from a cafe in Boston's Back Bay. A cafe she had never been to. It's not mine, she said. The IP is from a cafe in Back Bay. Adrian leaned over her shoulder. He looked at the screen. Save that page. Take a screenshot. Email it to yourself and print 3 copies. She did what he said. Her hands were steadier now. The career office opens at 9. He said, I'll go with you. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm offering. She looked at him. In the gray morning light. He looked younger than she had thought. The sharp angles of his face were softened. His coffee sat on the desk, untouched. Why are you helping me? He considered the question. Because I know what it's like to have someone take something from you that you earned. And because you didn't deserve it. She did not know what to say. So she nodded. Thank you. He picked up his coffee. Don't thank me until it works. It worked. The career office reviewed the IP logs at 9:15 a.m. The administrator, a woman named Patricia with reading glasses and a no-nonsense haircut, pulled up the login records on her screen. She compared the IP addresses. She checked the timestamps. She frowned. This request came from a cafe in Back Bay. She said, Do you live in Back Bay? No. Do you know anyone who would access your account without permission? Scarlett hesitated. She did not want to say Derek's name. Not here. Not in front of Adrian. But Patricia was waiting. My ex-boyfriend. He knows my password. Patricia nodded. She did not ask for details. I'm reinstating the recommendation. I'm also flagging your account for unauthorized access. You should change your password immediately. I will. Patricia looked at Scarlett over her glasses. Ms. Hayes. People try to tear each other down in this profession. It happens more than you'd think. The question is not whether you'll be attacked. The question is whether you'll be prepared. Scarlett nodded. I understand. Good. Your application is back on track. They left the office. In the hallway, Scarlett stopped. The relief hit her like a wave. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. You okay? Adrian asked. Yes. No. I don't know. That's normal. She opened her eyes. Thank you. I would have never thought to check the IP logs. You would have. You were just panicking. She almost smiled. Is that your professional assessment? My professional assessment is that you need sleep and a meal that isn't from a vending machine. I had a granola bar. That's not a meal. She did smile then. Small. But real. I'll eat dinner tonight. Good. They stood in the empty hallway. The morning light was pale through the windows. Scarlett felt lightheaded, part relief, part exhaustion, part something she did not want to name. She sent Adrian a text later that day. It worked. The internship is back on. She stared at her phone for a full minute after hitting send. She did not know why she was nervous. It was a simple message. Informational. Professional. He replied after a few minutes. Good. She stared at the single word. It was the first time she had texted him. She did not know why she had expected more. He was not a man of many words. She knew that. But the word felt insufficient. Like there was more he was not saying. But she felt something shift. Someone had helped her without wanting anything in return. She did not know how to process that. A week later, she came home to find Maya holding a piece of mail. You got something, Maya said. Scarlett took the envelope. It was from Chen and Associates. She opened it. Dear Miss Hayes, we are pleased to inform you that your application for the spring internship has been accepted. We look forward to welcoming you to our firm in January. She read it twice. Then she looked up at Maya. I got it. Maya screamed. She grabbed Scarlett in a hug. I knew it. I knew you would. Scarlett laughed. The sound surprised her. It had been weeks since she had laughed like that. She texted Adrian. I got the internship. His reply came after a few minutes. I never doubted it. She looked at the message for a long time. Then she put her phone down and let Maya drag her out for celebration dinner. They went to a Thai place near the apartment. Maya ordered enough food for 4 people. They ate and talked and laughed until Scarlett's cheeks hurt. You know, Maya said, dipping a spring roll in sauce. That TA of yours. He's been showing up a lot. He lives nearby. So do I. I don't show up at the exact moment you need help. Coincidence? Sure. Maya smiled. Or he's been keeping an eye on you. Scarlett shook her head. He's not like that. How do you know? She did not have an answer. That Saturday, Scarlett was at the library when Adrian sat down across from her. He had a book and no coffee. You don't have to sit with me, she said. I know. He opened his book. He started reading. She watched him for a moment. The way his eyes moved across the page. The way his fingers rested on the spine of the book, relaxed, patient. The way he did not look at her like he expected something. Most people who sat near her wanted something. A conversation. An excuse to talk. A reason to fill the silence. Adrian did not. He just sat. She went back to her own reading. The words were easier to focus on with him there. She did not know why. Maybe because the silence felt shared rather than empty. Maybe because she knew that if she looked up, he would still be there, not watching her, just existing in the same space. They sat in silence for 2 hours. The only sounds were pages turning and the distant hum of the heating system. The clock on the wall read 9:47 p.m. She had not felt the time pass. When she packed up to leave, he looked up. Scarlett. Yes. About the internship. Chen and Associates is a good firm, but they have a reputation for working their juniors hard. Make sure you set boundaries early. She nodded. I will. Good. She walked out of the library. The air was cold. The sky was gray. She pulled her coat tighter and walked home. He had come to the library to sit with her. Not to talk. Not to flirt. Just to be there. She did not know what to call that. She started leaving the library later. He was usually there, at the same table, reading. They did not talk much. They did not need to. One night, she closed her book and looked at him. Why do you stay? He looked up. Because I like the quiet. Your apartment isn't quiet. It is. But it's empty. She understood. In her previous life, she had hated coming home to an empty apartment after Derek left. The silence had felt accusatory. Like the walls were reminding her that she was alone. Sometimes I don't want to go home either, she said. He nodded. Then stay. She stayed. The clock ticked. The pages turned. The world outside the window was dark and cold. But inside, at a library table, two people who had been hurt by the people they trusted most sat together in silence. It was not a date. It was not a confession. It was something quieter and more important. It was trust. 3 weeks passed. Scarlett settled into the rhythm of Harvard. Classes. Study groups. The library. Adrian was a constant presence, not intrusive. Not demanding. Just there. Like a fixed point she could navigate by. She learned things about him in small pieces. He had grown up in New York. His mother was a pianist. His father's trial had lasted 8 months. The media had covered every day of it. Adrian had sat in the gallery for every single hearing. Did you believe he was innocent? She asked one night. They were walking home from the library. The streets were empty. Their footsteps echoed. I believed he was my father. Adrian said. That was enough. Did you ever find out the truth? He was quiet for a long moment. I found enough to know that the system didn't care about the truth. They cared about a conviction. They got one. She did not push. She knew what it was like to carry questions with no answers. They reached her building. She stopped. This is me. He nodded. Good night. Scarlett. Good night. Adrian. She watched him walk away. He did not look back. But she had stopped expecting him to. His silhouette grew smaller against the streetlights until the rain swallowed him completely. She went inside. Her hands were cold. Her coat was wet. She stood in the entryway and let the warmth of the building seep into her skin. Before she took off her coat, she did something she had been postponing. She walked to her desk. She opened the bottom drawer. She pulled out an envelope she had prepared the week before, copies of her thesis drafts, her Harvard application materials, her original personal statement, everything with timestamps, everything that proved her work was her own. She had started gathering these documents the day after Derek showed up at her apartment. She had not known why at the time. Instinct. Maybe. Or the memory of her past life. where Derek had used her trust against her and she had no proof to defend herself. Knowing the truth from my previous life was not enough. This time, I needed evidence. She put the envelope in her bag. Tomorrow, she would rent a safe deposit box at the bank near campus. She would put the documents somewhere Derek could not reach. She was not going to let him take anything from her again. The next morning, she walked to the bank on Massachusetts Avenue. The teller was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who did not ask questions. Scarlett rented a safe deposit box for $60 a year. She placed the envelope inside, her thesis drafts, her personal statement drafts, the email printouts with timestamps. She closed the drawer. She locked it. She walked out of the bank with the key in her pocket. It felt heavier than it should have. She went inside. Maya was already asleep. The apartment was warm. She sat on her bed with her laptop and opened a new document. She typed, "Things I know about Adrian Chase." Then she stared at the screen. She knew his coffee order. She knew he stayed late because he did not like empty apartments. She knew his father had been convicted of a crime he might not have committed. She knew he was fair when he did not have to be. She did not know why he kept showing up in her life. She closed the laptop. But she was starting to realize that not knowing was part of the answer. He kept showing up because she let him. Because she wanted him to. And that scared her more than Derek ever had. The next morning, she found a note slipped under her apartment door. She picked it up. The paper was warm from lying on the radiator-heated floor. It was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. The handwriting was precise. Controlled, the same handwriting she had seen on grading comments in her study group materials. Chen and Associates starts in January. Their managing partner was a student of Hartwell's. She remembers her. Use that. No signature. But she knew who it was from. She smiled. She folded the note carefully and put it in the desk drawer where she kept the things that mattered. The Harvard acceptance letter. The key to the safe deposit box. Now this note. She had evidence of Adrian Chase's kindness. She was building a collection. She folded the note and put it in her desk drawer. Next to the Harvard acceptance letter. Next to the beginning of the life she was building. She did not tell Maya about the note. Some things she wanted to keep for herself. That evening, she found herself thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her in the career office. Not like she was a student he was helping. Not like she was a case he was solving. Like she was someone worth protecting. She did not know what to do with that. She called Maya into her room. Her friend came in, flopped on the bed, and looked at her expectantly. "Spill. I don't know what you're talking about. You have that look. The one you get when you're thinking about him." "I'm not. Scarlett. I've known you for 4 years. You get quiet when you're working through something. And you've been very quiet lately." Scarlett sat on the edge of the bed. "He's my TA. So it's complicated. Life is complicated. That's not a reason to avoid it." Scarlett looked at her friend. Maya was not someone who overthought things. She felt. She acted. She moved on. Scarlett envied that. "What if I'm wrong?" Scarlett asked. "What if I'm reading something that isn't there? Then you'll figure it out." "But what if you're right?" Scarlett did not have an answer. She lay awake that night, staring at the smooth white ceiling. Her mind replayed the last 6 weeks in fragments. The center seat, the study group, the coffee in the library, the way he had appeared on the sidewalk the night Derek grabbed her arm. She had spent her entire adult life believing that love was a transaction. You gave, you received, you kept score until someone defaulted. Derek had taught her that. The hospital bed had confirmed it. But Adrian did not keep score. He gave without asking. He showed up without announcing. He stayed without expecting anything in return. She did not know how to trust that, but she was starting to want to try. November came with colder air and the first whispers of winter. Scarlett had been at Harvard for 3 months. She had settled into a rhythm that felt almost natural: classes, study sessions, the library, home. The edges of her new life had softened. She no longer woke up expecting to find herself back in the hospital bed. But November also brought something else. A restlessness she could not name. She found herself thinking about Adrian at odd hours, during lectures, while eating dinner, in the 5 minutes before she fell asleep. She caught herself replaying his voice, his corrections, The way he had looked at her in the career office. She told herself it was professional admiration. She almost believed it. Scarlett had stopped checking her email login history every morning. She had stopped looking over her shoulder when she walked home. The vigilance had settled into something quieter, a readiness she carried without thinking about it. She had not seen Derek since the night on her sidewalk. She had not seen Sienna since the cafe, but she had not forgotten either of them. She had simply moved them to a different part of her mind, a file cabinet labeled pending, to be opened when she had enough evidence to act. The evidence collection became a habit. She saved screenshots of her account activity weekly. She documented every interaction with Derek, every message, every attempt to contact her. She kept a log of dates, times, and locations. She did not know exactly what she was building toward, but she knew she would need it. Adrian noticed the change in her. Not the evidence collecting, she kept that private. But the calm, the focus, the way she moved through her days like someone who had stopped running and started planning. "You're different," he said one evening. They were in the library. The usual table. The usual hour. "Different how?" "Calmer. Like you've made a decision." She considered this. "I have made a decision. I'm done being afraid of him. He can try to hurt me, but I'm not going to make it easy." Adrian nodded. He did not ask who him was. He did not need to. "That's good," he said. "Fear is useful. It keeps you alert. But if it runs your life, you've already lost." "Did you learn that from your father's trial?" He was quiet. She thought she had pushed too far. But then he spoke. "I learned it sitting in a courtroom for 8 months, watching my father try not to look afraid while 12 strangers decided whether he would spend the rest of his life in prison. He was afraid. I could see it. But he didn't let it control him. He showed up every day. He answered every question. He looked the jury in the eye even when he knew they didn't believe him." "Was he convicted?" "Yes. For something he did." Adrian looked at her. His eyes were unreadable. "I don't know. That's the worst part. I sat through every day of that trial and I still don't know if my father was guilty. I know the prosecution didn't prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. But that's not the same as innocence. And I've spent 10 years trying to figure out the difference." Scarlett did not know what to say. She had spent her past life believing Derek was a good man who made mistakes. She had died without ever knowing the truth about what he had done with their money, their future, their marriage. Maybe some questions did not have answers. "My ex-boyfriend," she said slowly, "he took everything from me in my previous life. Our savings, my credit, my reputation. I died without ever proving what he did." Adrian looked at her. "Your previous life." She realized what she had said. She covered it quickly, metaphorically. "The person I was before I left him. She's dead." He accepted this. "Then this life is about proving what the last one couldn't." "Yes." He held her gaze. "Then we have work to do." They worked. Not on her cases. Not on her outlines. But on something harder. She told him about the past she could not fully explain, the version of her history that included Derek's slow destruction of her confidence. She did not mention the rebirth explicitly. She did not need to. She told him enough. He listened. He did not offer solutions. He did not tell her she should have left sooner. He just listened. When she finished, he said, "You survived. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like winning. Survival is the first step. Winning comes after." She looked at him. "When did you survive?" He was quiet. "Every day of my father's trial. Every day of the year after. Every time someone recognized my last name and made assumptions about who I was. And winning. I haven't gotten there yet. But I'm working on it." She understood. They were the same, two people who had been shaped by trauma, learning to become something more than what had been done to them. "Then we'll work on it together," she said. He nodded. Together. The next week, Scarlett made a decision. She would not wait for Derek to strike again. She would prepare. She went to the bank and added more documents to her safe deposit box. A record of her academic achievements from undergraduate. A list of every joint account she had ever shared with Derek. A printed copy of the IP logs from the recommendation letter incident. A summary of his visit to her apartment. With date, time, and witness. She added one more thing. A letter she wrote to herself, sealed in an envelope, dated the day she had been reborn. Dear Scarlett. It began. You survived something you don't remember. This time, you will not just survive. You will win. She sealed the envelope and placed it in the box. She closed the drawer. She locked it. The metal clicked with a finality that felt good. She walked out of the bank into the winter air. A cold front had moved in overnight. The wind cut through her coat. She pulled her collar tighter and walked back toward campus. The key still warm in her pocket. The work did not stop there. She made a list of everything she knew about Derek from her past life. The bank where he had opened the secret account. The name of the lawyer who had helped him transfer assets. The date he had filed the false financial affidavit. She wrote it all down in a notebook she kept locked in her desk drawer. She did not know when she would use this information, but she knew she would need it. In her previous life, she had been blindsided by every move he made. She had reacted instead of acted. This time, she was building a map of his patterns. She would not be caught off guard again. When she walked out of the bank, the winter air hit her face. She did not shiver. She felt warm. She had started building her walls, and they were strong. She also did something she had been avoiding. She opened the folder marked Adrian Chase. The notes she had been keeping about him since the first day. His coffee order. His father's trial. The way he stayed late because his apartment was empty. The way he had shown up the night Derek grabbed her arm. She looked at the notes and realized something. She was not collecting evidence on Adrian. She was trying to understand him. And understanding him was dangerous. Because the more she understood, the harder she was falling. She closed the folder. She locked her desk drawer. She went to the kitchen to find Maya making tea. You look like you've been arguing with yourself, Maya said. I have been. Did you win? I don't know yet. Maya handed her a mug. Drink this. Sleep on it. Tomorrow, you'll know. Scarlett wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Maya, how did you know when you were ready to trust someone? Maya considered the question. I didn't know. I just decided. There's no magic moment when you're sure. You look at what they've done. You look at who they are. And you decide that the risk is worth it. And if you've been wrong before, then you learn. But you don't let the person who hurt you keep hurting you by making you afraid of everyone else. Scarlett drank her tea. Maya was right. She usually was. She went to bed. She did not sleep. But she stopped arguing with herself. She decided. 2 days later, she started her internship at Chen and Associates. The office was on the 15th floor of a glass tower in the financial district. The lobby had a waterfall. The elevators required a security badge. She felt like she had stepped into a world she had only read about. The first week was overwhelming. She was assigned to a senior associate named Rachel who spoke faster than anyone Scarlett had ever met and expected her notes to be formatted in a specific way she had not been told about. She made mistakes. She corrected them. She learned. By the second week, she had found her rhythm. She arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed everything. The partners started to notice. One of them, a woman named Margaret Chen, the founding partner, called her into her office on Friday afternoon. You're Hartwell's student, Margaret said. It was not a question. Yes. She said you were the best she'd seen in 5 years. I didn't believe her. Now I do. Scarlett did not know what to say. She said thank you. Keep working the way you're working. You'll go far. She walked out of Margaret Chen's office feeling like she had just received a gift she had not earned yet. But she intended to earn it. But she did not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way his hand had touched her face. The almost kiss was still ahead of her, waiting. She could feel it coming, like a storm on the horizon. She was not afraid of the storm. She was afraid of how much she wanted it to arrive. The moot court competition was announced in late November. Scarlett saw the notice on her way to contracts. A printed sheet in bold letters, tacked to the bulletin board outside the main lecture hall. First year moot court. Registration opening December 1st. The grand prize was $5,000 and an automatic bid to the regional competition. She stood in front of the notice for a full minute. Students pushed past her, late for class. But she did not move. Her mind was already racing through the logistics. The case would be released 2 weeks before arguments. Teams of 2. Oral arguments before a panel of real judges. Briefs due 3 days before. She wanted to win. Not for the money. Not for the recognition. Because she needed to prove to herself that she could stand in a courtroom and hold her own. The notice went up on the law school bulletin board. A printed sheet with bold letters. Harvard Law First Year Moot Court, registration opens December 1st. Scarlett read the notice 3 times. The competition was the biggest event of the first-year calendar. Teams of 2 would argue a fictional appellate case before a panel of real judges. Winners received a cash prize, a citation, and the attention of every top firm in Boston. She wanted to enter, but she needed a partner. She found Adrian in his office the next morning. "I want to enter the moot court competition." He looked up from his grading. "You need a partner." "Yes. Do you have one in mind?" She looked at him. "I was hoping you would compete with me." He set down his pen. "I'm a TA. I can't compete. You can't be a contestant. But you can be a coach. The rules allow outside coaches." He considered this. "Why me?" "Because you're the best litigator I've met. And because I trust you." He was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was the radiator hissing in the corner. "I'll coach you," he said. "But I don't go easy on people I coach." "I'm not asking you to go easy." "Good." They started meeting twice a week. The competition was 2 months away. The case was a complex commercial dispute involving breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent conveyance, and a question of personal jurisdiction that had split 3 circuits. Scarlett read the record cover to cover in 2 days. She outlined arguments for both sides. She wrote and rewrote her opening statement until she could deliver it without notes. Adrian was relentless. He grilled her on every point. He played devil's advocate harder than any opposing counsel would. He made her argue the losing side until she found a way to win. "You're thinking like a student," he said one evening. "Stop. Think like a lawyer. The law is a tool. The facts are your material. Your job is to build something the judges cannot tear down." "How do I do that?" "You find the one fact they can't explain away. You anchor your argument to it. You build everything else around it." She found the fact. A single sentence buried in the trial transcript, a witness statement that contradicted the plaintiff's entire timeline. She built her argument around it. Adrian watched her present it. When she finished, he did not critique. He just nodded. "That's it. Really, really." She felt a rush of something she had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not borrowed from someone else's approval. Earned. The competition was held in Austin Hall on a Saturday morning in late January, the oldest building on the law school campus, with wood-paneled walls and portraits of dead judges lining the corridors. Scarlett arrived 2 hours early. She walked through the empty courtroom, testing the podium height, checking the sight lines to the bench, memorizing where each judge would sit. Adrian met her in the hallway. He was wearing a dark suit she had not seen before. He looked different, older, sharper, like a lawyer who had already won cases she had not heard of. "You're early," he said. "So are you. I wanted to make sure you had everything." She held up her folder. 3 copies of my argument, 2 copies of my brief, a list of the judge's published opinions, a water bottle, a backup pen. "You brought a backup pen." "I brought 3. He almost smiled. That was the closest she got to a pep talk. The courtroom filled slowly. Students from other sections, professors, a few local attorneys who came to watch. Scarlett sat in the front row, her folder on her lap, her heart beating steady and even. Her case was called at 10:30 a.m. She stood. She walked to the podium. She looked at the 3 judges, a federal district judge with silver hair, a state appellate judge who had not smiled once during orientation, and a retired Supreme Court justice whose name she had read in a dozen casebooks. She did not feel nervous. She felt ready. She argued for 12 minutes without looking at her notes. She answered every question the judges threw at her. The federal judge challenged her standing argument. The appellate judge pressed her on the fiduciary duty standard. The retired justice asked a single question about policy implications that she had prepared for in her second week of coaching. She pivoted when they pushed her. She returned to her anchor fact like a ship returning to harbor. She did not let them see her doubt. When she finished, The retired justice looked at her over his glasses. Ms. Hayes, that was the best first-year argument I have heard in 20 years of judging this competition. She did not know what to say. She thanked him and sat down. She did not win. The other team had a stronger written brief. But she placed second. The cash prize was smaller, but the citation was the same, and the retired justice had remembered her name. After the competition, the law school held a reception. Scarlett stood near the window with a glass of sparkling water, watching the crowd. People she had never spoken to came up to congratulate her. A partner from a Boston firm handed her a business card. A second-year student asked if she wanted to join the law review. She answered each question. She accepted each card. She smiled until her face ached. The wine glass in her hand was empty, but she held it anyway, a prop to keep her hands occupied. The retired justice found her near the dessert table. Ms. Hayes, I meant what I said. If you ever want to clerk in my chambers, the door is open. He handed her his personal card. No assistant, no office number, his home email. She held the card like it was made of glass. Thank you, Justice. I don't know what to say. Say you'll apply. That's all I ask. She nodded. He moved on. She stood frozen, the card warm in her palm, the weight of his offer settling over her. And then she felt a hand on her elbow. She turned. Adrian was standing beside her. You did well. I came second. You argued like you came first. The brief was the difference. You know that. She nodded. Thank you. For the coaching. I didn't do anything. You did the work. They stood together in the corner of the room, away from the crowd. The reception noise faded into background static. Why did you help me? She asked. You didn't have to. He looked at her. Because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I wanted to be there when you found it. She did not know how to respond. Her chest felt tight. The air between them felt charged. Adrian. Scarlett. He stepped closer. She did not step back. He reached up. His hand touched her face. His fingers were warm against her cheek. She did not pull away. He leaned in. Her phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. She fumbled for it. Derek's name on the screen. She silenced it, but the moment was gone. Adrian stepped back. His hand dropped. You should answer that. I don't want to. You should. Because if you don't, he'll keep calling. And you'll keep wondering when he'll stop. He was right. She knew he was right. Go. He said. Handle it. I'll be here. She looked at him. She wanted to say something. She did not know what. Thank you. For understanding. He nodded. Go. She walked out of the reception. Into the cold night. With Derek's name still glowing on her silenced phone. She did not answer it. She watched the screen until it went dark. Then she put the phone in her pocket. The walk back to her apartment was cold and silent. Her breath formed clouds in front of her face. She replayed the almost kiss in her mind, the warmth of his hand on her cheek, the way he had leaned in, the way she had not pulled away. She had wanted him to kiss her. She had wanted it more than she had wanted anything in a long time. And Derek's phone call had stolen that moment. She was angry. Not at Derek, she was always angry at Derek. She was angry at herself for letting him still have that power, for letting his name on her phone undo a moment she had been waiting for. When she got home, she sat on her bed and stared at Derek's contact in her phone. She had kept his number for practical reasons, in case she needed evidence. In case he tried something she had to document. But practical reasons felt like excuses now. She deleted his contact. Then she blocked his number. She sat in the dark, breathing. The silence felt different, lighter. She was not ready for that. But she was ready for something else. She was ready to stop running. The next morning, Scarlett woke up with a clarity she had not felt since her rebirth. The almost kiss had not happened. But it had almost happened. And that changed everything. She could not deny what she felt for Adrian. She could not pretend the tension between them was intellectual. It was not. It was personal. It was real. But she could not act on it. Not yet. Not while Derek was still a threat. Not while she was still learning to trust. So she did what she did best. She focused on the work. She threw herself into her classes. She prepared for finals. She met with Professor Hartwell to discuss her legal writing. She accepted the law review invitation. And she saw Adrian almost every day. The library, the study group, a brief exchange in the hallway. Neither of them mentioned the almost kiss. But it was there, in every glance, every pause, every moment of silence that stretched a second too long. She was falling for him, and she was terrified, but she was also done pretending. She had spent her past life loving someone who did not deserve her. This time, she would love someone who did, and she would let herself be loved in return. She closed her notebook. She turned off her lamp. She lay in the dark and let herself feel it, the hope she had been suppressing since the day she walked into room 204 and saw him standing at the front of the lecture hall. In her previous life, she had loved Derek the way a drowning person loves a lifeguard, desperately, without question, without asking whether he deserved her devotion. She had given everything and received nothing in return. Adrian was different. He did not ask her to give. He asked her to grow. He challenged her, protected her, and stood beside her without demanding anything in return. She did not know if she was ready for love. She did not know if she would ever be ready, but she knew she was ready to stop running from it. The ethics hearing notice arrived on a Tuesday. Scarlett found it tucked between her casebook and a stack of graded assignments in her campus mailbox. The envelope was official, Harvard Law letterhead, embossed seal, return address from the Office of Academic Affairs. She opened it standing in the hallway, surrounded by students rushing to class. The letter was brief, formal. She read it 3 times before the words settled into meaning. Dear Miss Hayes, it has been brought to the attention of the Ethics Committee that materials submitted as part of your admissions application may contain passages that were not originally authored by you. Specifically, a draft of your personal statement, bearing your name and dated 2 years prior to your application, has been submitted as evidence suggesting that the final version submitted to Harvard was not your original work. A hearing has been scheduled for January 15th. Your attendance is required. She read it a 4th time. Her hands were cold. Her chest was tight. Derek had done this. She knew it with a certainty that did not require proof. He had kept her old drafts from their college years, the messy, exploratory versions she had shown him when she was still figuring out what she wanted to say. He had kept them for years, waiting for the right moment to use them. In my previous life, he had used my trust against me. This time, he used my words. She folded the letter and put it in her bag. She did not cry. She did not panic. She walked to her next class and sat through a lecture on remedies without hearing a single word. After class, she found Adrian in his office. She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it. His face did not change. When did you get this? An hour ago. Have you told anyone? Maya. Now you. He set the letter down. Tell me about the draft he has. Scarlett sat in the chair across from his desk. She forced herself to think clearly. I wrote a draft of my personal statement during junior year. I showed it to Derek. He said it was good. I rewrote it completely when I applied to Harvard. New structure, new focus, new voice. But the core idea was the same. He's going to argue that because I showed him an early draft with similar themes. I didn't write the final version. Did he help you write either version? No. He never read the final version. I stopped showing him my work after he skipped the exam. Adrian nodded. He picked up a pen and tapped it against the desk. She watched him think. The committee will compare the 2 documents. If the similarities are thematic but not structural, that's not plagiarism. That's revision. Every writer develops ideas over time. He has my early draft. The timestamps are from 2 years before my application. Do you have timestamps for your later drafts? I have the final version I submitted, with its own timestamps, but I deleted the intermediate versions. I didn't think I'd need them. Adrian set the pen down. That's a problem. But it's not insurmountable. What do you mean? You wrote that personal statement in the campus library, on your personal laptop, over the course of 3 weeks. The library keeps network logs. Your laptop has a file history. If we can show that the document was created, revised, and finalized on your own devices, on a timeline that shows organic development from first draft to final, then his early draft becomes irrelevant. She had not thought of that. She had been too focused on what Derek had. Not on what she had. Where do I start? Library IT. Request your network login history for the weeks before the application deadline. Then check your laptop's file metadata. If the creation dates and revision history are intact, we have a chain of evidence. She stood up. I'll start now. Scarlett. She stopped at the door. Did you write it? She turned. He was looking at her with an expression she had not seen before. Not judgment. Not suspicion. A question he needed answered before he committed to her defense. I wrote every word, she said. Every draft. Every revision. Every sentence. No one helped me. No one told me what to say. That personal statement is mine. He held her gaze. Then we fight. She looked at him. In the dim light of his office, with the ethics hearing looming, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like she was not alone. Why do you believe me? She asked. Because I know what it looks like when someone is telling the truth. You don't deflect. You don't over-explain. You say what happened and you let the evidence speak. That's what innocent people do. She did not know if that was true, but she wanted it to be. She walked home through the Harvard campus, the winter air biting her cheeks. The trees were bare. The paths were salted against ice. Students rushed past her, their breath visible, their faces buried in scarves. She moved through them like a ghost, her mind miles away. When she got home, Maya was already there. Scarlett handed her the letter without speaking. Maya read it, her face cycling through shock, anger, and a cold determination Scarlett had never seen before. He's trying to destroy you. I know. What are you going to do? Scarlett sat down at her desk. She opened her laptop. I'm going to prove him wrong. The next 3 days were a blur of paperwork. Scarlett barely slept. She ate when Maya put food in front of her. She showered when she could not focus anymore. Everything else was the case. The first step was the network logs. She went to the IT department in person, explained the situation, and requested a record of her login activity for the 3 weeks before the Harvard application deadline. The IT technician was a young man with a nose ring who seemed more interested in her story than her technical request. You're the one who argued at the moot court, right? I heard about that. She nodded. He printed the logs without further questions. The second step was the file metadata. She exported the creation dates, modification dates, and revision history of every version of her personal statement she could find on her laptop. The early exploratory draft she had written in a single night. The second draft, written after a conversation with her mother. The third draft, restructured around a single metaphor. The final version, polished and submitted. The third step was the hardest. She had to find the intermediate drafts she had almost deleted. She searched her backup folders, her email attachments, her cloud storage. She found 2 versions she had forgotten about, one saved as an email draft, one tucked inside a folder labeled Old Essays. Both had timestamps that predated Derek's early draft. Both showed her voice developing over time. She organized everything into a binder. Tab 1, Timeline. Tab 2, Derek's early draft. Tab 3, Intermediate drafts with timestamps. Tab 4, Final version with metadata. Tab 5, Network logs. Tab 6, a personal statement she wrote for the committee, explaining the evolution of her essay without defensiveness or anger. The early draft Derek had, the final version she submitted, and 2 intermediate drafts she had forgotten existed, buried in a backup folder. The intermediate drafts were the key. They showed the evolution of her writing, the same ideas, expressed differently, the same voice, refined over time. They proved that the final version was not copied from any single source. It was the product of weeks of work. She organized everything into a binder. She wrote a timeline of her writing process. She prepared a statement explaining how Derek had obtained the early draft and why he was making this accusation now. When she was done, she sat back and looked at the evidence she had assembled. It was not perfect, but it was enough. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th. It was the same week as her finals. She studied for her exams with the binder on her desk, the ethics hearing notice pinned to her corkboard. She did not tell Professor Hartwell. She did not tell anyone except Adrian and Maya. Maya's reaction was immediate. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to fly to wherever he is and kill him with my bare hands. That would not help my case. I don't care about your case. I care about you. Maya grabbed her shoulders. You wrote that essay. I was there. I watched you write it. I brought you food while you wrote it. If they try to say you didn't write it, I will testify. Scarlett felt something crack in her chest. Thank you. That's what friends do. The night before the hearing, Scarlett could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind cycling through worst-case scenarios. The committee could rule against her. She could be expelled. Her Harvard career would end before it really began. Derek would win. She got up at 2 a.m. She opened her laptop. She wrote a letter to the committee. She did not defend herself. She did not explain the timeline. She told them the truth about who she was and why she had written the essay she submitted. She told them about her mother working double shifts, about being the first person in her family to go to college, about the fear and hope she had poured into every word of that application. She wrote until the words stopped coming. Then she closed her laptop and lay back down. She did not sleep, but she stopped being afraid. Whatever happened tomorrow, she had done nothing wrong, and she would not apologize for being attacked. The hearing was held in a conference room on the third floor of the law school. The room was small, a long table, 6 chairs, a window that faced the interior courtyard. Scarlett arrived at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. She was wearing her best suit, the same one she had worn to the moot court competition. She carried her binder, her laptop, and a copy of the letter she had written at 2 a.m. Adrian was waiting outside the room. He was not in the hearing, he could not be, as her TA, but he had come to wait. You don't need to be here, she said. I know. You should be grading papers. I know. He looked at her. You have the evidence. You have the timeline. You have the truth. The committee will see that. And if they don't, then we appeal. And we keep fighting until they do. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the system would work, that truth would win, that she would not be destroyed by someone who had already destroyed her once. But she had learned, in her previous life, that systems did not always work, that truth did not always win, that sometimes, people with power made the wrong choice and there was nothing you could do about it. I'm scared, she said. It was the first time she had said it out loud. Adrian stepped closer. I know, but you're going to walk in there, and you're going to tell them the truth, and you're not going to let him win. How do you know? Because I've seen you fight, and you don't lose. She held his gaze. Then she turned and walked into the room. The committee consisted of 3 faculty members. Professor Hartwell was not among them. The committee was drawn from other departments. The chair was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses. She introduced herself as Dean Patricia Morrison, no relation to Scarlett's undergraduate dean, Ms. Hayes. Thank you for coming. We have reviewed the materials submitted by both parties. We would like to hear your account. Scarlett opened her binder. She walked the committee through her timeline. She showed them the early draft Derek had submitted, then the intermediate drafts she had recovered from her backup folder, with timestamps that proved she had been developing her essay over weeks, not days. She showed them the final version, with its creation date, revision history, and metadata. The early draft was written during my junior year, she said. I showed it to my then boyfriend, Derek Walsh. In confidence. He kept it without my knowledge. When I applied to Harvard, I wrote a completely new statement. The themes are similar because they come from the same life, but the words are mine. Every single one of them. Dean Morrison looked at the documents. She passed them to the other committee members. Mr. Walsh claims that the similarities between the early draft and the final version indicate that you did not write the final version independently. That's false. The similarities are thematic, not structural. I wrote about my mother's influence in both versions because my mother is the reason I'm here. The specific language, the structure, the arguments, those are completely different. And the fact that you deleted the intermediate drafts. I didn't delete them deliberately. I didn't think I needed to keep them, but I recovered them from a backup folder. As you can see from the metadata, Dean Morrison studied the documents for a long moment. She passed them to the committee member on her left, then to the member on her right. Each of them read through the binder Scarlett had prepared. The room was silent except for the turning of pages. Scarlett kept her hands folded on the table. She had done everything she could. The rest was up to them. Finally, Dean Morrison set down the binder. She removed her glasses. Ms. Hayes, I want to be clear. The committee takes plagiarism allegations seriously. We also take fabricated evidence seriously. The recording submitted by Mr. Walsh is deeply concerning. Yes, ma'am. We will need time to review the forensic analysis. But I want to commend you on the thoroughness of your documentation. Scarlett nodded. Thank you. Dean Morrison studied the documents for a long moment. The room was silent. Ms. Hayes, we have one more piece of evidence to consider. Mr. Walsh submitted a recording of a conversation in which you allegedly discussed having someone else write your application. Scarlett's blood went cold. That's not possible. I never discussed that with anyone because it never happened. The recording is dated September 2008. Do you recall that conversation? She thought back. September 2008. The month of the exam. The month she had cut Derek off. I don't know what conversation you're referring to because I never had it. The recording is brief. Would you like to hear it? Yes. Dean Morrison pressed a button on her phone. A scratchy recording played. A woman's voice, Scarlett's voice, or someone who sounded very much like her, said, I couldn't have done it without her. She basically wrote the whole thing. The recording stopped. Scarlett stared at the phone. The voice was hers, but she had never said those words. Do you recognize that recording? Ms. Hayes. It sounds like me, but I never said that. The committee will consider the authenticity of the recording, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to respond. Scarlett's mind was racing. Derek had fabricated a recording. He had taken snippets of her voice, from old voicemails, from conversations he had recorded without her knowledge, and spliced them together. In her previous life, she had caught him doing something similar to someone else. She had not believed the victim then. She believed them now. That recording is fabricated, she said. I have never said those words. Derek Walsh has the technical ability to edit audio. He worked with sound editing software in college. I can provide witnesses who heard me talk about writing my own essay. Dean Morrison nodded. We will take that into consideration. The hearing lasted another 40 minutes. Scarlett answered every question. She did not falter. She provided documentation for every claim she made. When it was over, Dean Morrison said, the committee will deliberate and provide our decision within 1 week. Thank you for your cooperation. Ms. Hayes. Scarlett gathered her materials. She walked out of the room on steady legs. Adrian was still waiting in the hallway. He stood up when he saw her. How did it go? I don't know. He has a fabricated recording. Adrian's expression hardened. Of what? Me saying someone else wrote my essay. It's fake. I never said it. Do you have proof it's fake? I can prove I never said those words because I never wrote that sentence. But proving a negative is hard. Adrian was quiet. Then he said, the committee will look at the metadata on the recording. If it's been edited, the file structure will show it. I can't ask them to do forensic analysis on a recording. That's not how this works. No. But I can. She looked at him. What do you mean? I have contacts from my father's trial. Forensic audio experts. If I send them the recording, they can tell us whether it's been altered. You would do that. He looked at her. I told you. We fight. The week of waiting was the longest of Scarlett's life. Finals came and went. She sat for 4 exams, wrote 8 essays, and remembered none of it. Her body was present but her mind was in the conference room, replaying every question, every answer, every glance from the committee members. Adrian sent the recording to his contact. The analysis came back in 3 days. The recording had been edited. The voice was Scarlett's, but the words had been spliced from different recordings. The expert identified 7 distinct segments, joined together with editing software. Scarlett read the report. Then she read it again. She had proof. She submitted the report to the committee as supplemental evidence. She did not gloat. She did not call Derek. She submitted it and waited. 3 days later, she received an email from Dean Morrison. Dear Miss Hayes, After reviewing all evidence, including the supplemental forensic analysis, the committee has unanimously determined that there is no credible basis for the plagiarism allegation. The case against you has been dismissed. Your academic record will reflect no findings of misconduct. We apologize for the distress this process has caused you. She read the email 3 times. Then she called Maya. I won. Maya screamed so loud Scarlett had to hold the phone away from her ear. I'm coming over. We're celebrating. Scarlett laughed. The sound was rusty. She had not laughed in days. She called Adrian next. The committee dismissed the case. She heard him exhale. Good. I couldn't have done it without you. The forensic report wouldn't have mattered if you hadn't built the rest of the case. You did the work. I just made a phone call. She stood in her apartment, looking out the window at the gray January sky. The relief was so intense it felt like vertigo. Adrian. Yes. Thank you. He was quiet. Then, you don't have to thank me. I told you I'd be here. She closed her eyes. The words settled into her chest. I know, she said. That's why I'm thanking you. She hung up. She stood at the window for a long time. The sky was clearing. The clouds were breaking. She had won. Not just the case. Something bigger. She had faced the person who had destroyed her in her previous life. And she had beaten him with evidence, preparation, and the support of people who believed in her. She was not the woman who had died in that hospital bed. She was someone new, and she was ready for whatever came next. That evening, Maya came over with Thai food and a bottle of wine. They ate on the floor of the living room, surrounded by takeout containers, laughing about nothing. I can't believe you beat a Harvard ethics committee in your first semester, Maya said. I can't believe Derek thought he could fake a recording and get away with it. He underestimated you. That's his mistake. Scarlett sipped her wine. He's been underestimating me our entire relationship. I'm just glad I finally proved him wrong. What happens now? Scarlett considered the question. I finish my finals. I start my internship. I figure out what's next. And Adrian. Scarlett looked at her glass. I don't know. You almost kissed at the moot court reception. We were interrupted by Derek, who is now out of the picture. Maya raised an eyebrow. So, I don't know if I'm ready. Maya set down her glass. Scarlett, you just fought a plagiarism accusation, passed your finals, and proved your ex-boyfriend is a liar. If you're not ready now, when will you be? Scarlett did not have an answer. After Maya left, she sat alone in the quiet apartment. The wine was warm in her stomach. The relief was still settling. She picked up her phone. She looked at Adrian's contact. She typed, "Are you free tonight?" She stared at the message. Then she deleted it. She typed again, "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." She sent it. His reply came less than a minute later. "You could have. But I'm glad I was there." She smiled. The screen glowed in the dark room. She did not write back. She did not need to. Some things did not need words. The next day, Scarlett walked to Adrian's office. She knocked. He opened the door. She did not say anything. She stepped forward. She kissed him. He did not pull away. His hand found her waist. Her fingers tangled in his collar. The kiss was soft at first, then deeper, like they were both remembering how to breathe. When she pulled back, he looked at her. His eyes were darker than she remembered. His hand was still on her waist. "I've been wanting to do that since the library," she said. "Which time in the library?" She laughed. "All of them." He pulled her closer. "I've been wanting to do that since you walked into room 204 and asked me if that was contracts." She looked at him. "That was the first day." "I know." She kissed him again. She let herself feel the warmth of his mouth on hers. The steadiness of his hand on her back. The simple miracle of being wanted by someone who had never given her a reason to doubt him. This time, she did not think about Derek, or the hearing, or the past. She thought about the warmth of his hand on her back, the steadiness of his presence, the way he had never once made her feel like she was too much. In her previous life, she had spent it waiting for someone to choose her. This time, she had chosen herself. She had spent her entire life waiting for permission to be happy. She stopped waiting. January turned to February. Scarlett started her internship at Chen and Associates. The work was demanding, 16-hour days. Document review. Research memos. A partner who expected perfection and accepted nothing less. She thrived in the pressure. The office became a second home. The associates learned her name. The partners started giving her real work. But she did not forget about Derek. The ethics hearing had been dismissed. But the accusation had left a mark. She knew he would try again. She knew because in her previous life, he had never stopped until she had nothing left. This time, she was ready. She filed a formal complaint with the Boston Police Department regarding the fabricated recording. She provided the forensic audio analysis, the timeline of Derek's harassment, the evidence of his unauthorized access to her email account. The police opened a file. They did not promise anything, but the file existed. She also filed a complaint with Harvard's Office of General Counsel. The fabricated recording had been submitted as evidence in a university hearing. That was a violation of university policy. She submitted the forensic report. She submitted Derek's contact information. She let the system do its work. Then she waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Not because she was afraid of what Derek would do, but because she wanted to be done with him. She wanted to close the chapter and never open it again. Adrian understood. He did not push her to talk. He did not ask her how she was processing. He just showed up, at her apartment with coffee, at the library with a seat saved, at the end of a long day with a silence that felt like safety. They had not defined what they were. The kiss had not been followed by a conversation, but neither of them seemed to need one. They moved through their days in parallel, orbiting each other, learning the shape of each other's presence without needing to name it. February brought a snowstorm that shut down the city. Scarlett was at the office when it started. She had been working on a research memo for Margaret Chen, the founding partner. The memo was due at 5 p.m. She finished it at 4:47 and emailed it with 13 minutes to spare. Margaret replied at 4:52. Good work. Go home before the storm gets worse. Scarlett packed her bag. By the time she reached the lobby, the snow was already piling up on the sidewalks. The buses had stopped running. She stood under the awning, watching the city turn white. By the time she left, the streets were white. The buses had stopped running. She stood under the awning of her building, watching the snow pile up, wondering how she would get home. Her phone buzzed. Adrian, where are you? Chen and Associates. Stuck. Stay there. I'm coming. She waited. 20 minutes later, she saw his silhouette through the snow. He was wearing a heavy coat she had never seen before. Snow was collecting on his shoulders and in his hair. He was carrying a second coat. Put this on, he said, handing it to her. It's colder than it looks. You walked here. I live 2 blocks away. It's fine. The office is 40 minutes from your apartment in good weather. He did not answer. He just held the coat open. She stepped into it. They walked home together through the snow. The streets were empty. The city was muffled and white. They did not talk. They did not need to. When they reached her building, she stopped at the door. Adrian. Yeah. Stay. He looked at her. The snow was still falling. His face was half in shadow. Are you sure? Yes. She unlocked the door. He followed her inside. They did not sleep together. That was not what she meant by stay. They sat on her couch with cups of tea, watching the snow fall through the window. Maya was at her boyfriend's apartment. The apartment was quiet. The radiator hissed. The snow kept falling. What happens when the snow stops? She asked. Life goes back to normal. Is that what you want? He looked at her. Normal isn't something I've had in a long time. Me neither. He set down his tea. I don't know what I want. Scarlett. I know I want to be near you. I know I feel more like myself when I'm with you than I have in years. I don't know what to call that. You don't have to call it anything. He reached for her hand. His fingers intertwined with hers. What do you want? He asked. She considered the question. In her previous life, she had wanted Derek to love her the way she loved him. She had wanted to be enough. She had wanted a future that felt safe. This time, she wanted something different. I want to stop being afraid, she said. I want to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to believe that someone can love me without destroying me. He lifted her hand to his lips. He kissed her knuckles. Then let me show you. The snow stopped the next morning. The city dug itself out. Life went back to normal. But something had shifted between them. A door had opened. Neither of them had closed it. 2 weeks later, the police called. They had arrested Derek Walsh for identity theft, fraud, and evidence tampering. The fabricated recording, combined with the email access violation and the plagiarism accusation, had been enough. Scarlett sat in her apartment, holding the phone, listening to the officer explain the charges. She did not feel triumphant. She felt something quieter. Closure. Ms. Hayes, you may be asked to testify at trial. Are you willing? Yes. She hung up. She called Adrian. They arrested him. Are you okay? I don't know. I think I am. Where are you? Home. I'm coming. He came. He sat with her. He did not say, I told you so, or, you were right. He just sat. She leaned into him. His arm wrapped around her. It's over, she said. It's over. She closed her eyes. For the first time since she had woken up in that dorm room, she felt like she could breathe. The news spread quickly. Derek Walsh, former college golden boy, arrested for fraud and evidence tampering. Scarlett's phone buzzed with messages from people she had not spoken to in years. She did not respond to most of them. She did not need their validation. Adrian came over that night with takeout from her favorite Thai place. They ate on the floor of her living room. What are you thinking about? He asked. I'm thinking about how strange it is. I spent so long being afraid of him, and now he's gone. And I don't feel empty. I feel full. That's because you filled yourself, not him. She looked at him. When did you get so wise? I've been taking lessons from you. She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed since the arrest. She closed her eyes. For the first time since she had woken up in that dorm room, she felt like she could breathe. March arrived with warmer air and longer days. The weeks between the arrest and graduation passed in a blur of finals and farewells. Scarlett finished her first year with a 3.9 GPA. She was invited to join the Harvard Law Review. She accepted. Adrian's fellowship was confirmed. He told her about it over dinner one night. His voice animated in a way she had not heard before. Is this what happiness feels like? She asked him. I think so. I'm still figuring it out. Me too. She reached across the table and took his hand. Derek Walsh's trial was scheduled for May. Scarlett had given her statement to the police, prepared her documentation, and handed everything to the prosecutor. She had done her part. Now she let the system do its work. She did not attend the preliminary hearing. She did not want to see his face. She had spent enough of her life looking at him. Instead, she focused on what mattered. Her internship was going well. The partners at Chen & Associates had started giving her assignments normally reserved for second-year associates. She was invited to client meetings. Her name appeared on a memo that went to the managing partner. She was building something. Not revenge. Not proof. A career. Adrian's contract as a TA ended in March. He was offered a position at a Boston law firm, the same firm where his father had once worked. He turned it down. Why? She asked him. They were at the library. Their usual table. Their usual hour. Because I don't want to spend my life cleaning up my father's legacy. I want to build my own. What are you going to do? Professor Hartwell offered me a research fellowship. I'm going to stay at Harvard. Work on a paper about fiduciary duty and wrongful convictions. She looked at him. You're staying. I'm staying. For the fellowship. For the fellowship. He paused. And for you. She did not know what to say, so she kissed him instead. Spring came to Cambridge in slow increments. The snow melted. The trees budded. The city shrugged off its winter coat. Scarlett watched it happen from the windows of the law library, from the sidewalk outside her office, from Adrian's apartment on the nights she stayed over. Their relationship had not been announced. It did not need to be. People noticed. Professor Hartwell raised an eyebrow when she saw them leave the library together. Maya gave Scarlett a knowing look every time she came home late. Scarlett did not explain. She did not need to. April brought the final semester of her first year. Exams. Papers. A legal writing competition she entered on a whim and placed third. She was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from building something, not from surviving something. One evening, she and Adrian were walking through Harvard Yard. The trees were blooming. The air was soft. Students were scattered across the grass, reading, talking, living their lives. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Do you ever think about the future?" He looked at her. "What kind of future?" "Long term. After graduation. After the fellowship." He considered the question. "I think about a practice. Boutique firm. Fiduciary litigation and appeals. Maybe teach part-time." "That sounds like you. What about you?" She looked at the buildings around her. The red brick. The green lawns. The place that had given her a second chance. "I want to start my own firm. Specialize in fraud cases. Help people who have been taken by the people they trusted." "That sounds like you." She smiled. "I learned from the best." They walked in silence for a while. Then he stopped. "Scarlett." She stopped too. The sun was setting behind the library. The light was golden. "I don't know what comes next. I don't know if we'll make it to next year, or the year after, or the rest of our lives. But I know I want to try. I know I want to be with you while we figure it out." She looked at him. The man who had corrected her analysis in an empty classroom. The man who had brought her coffee at 10:47 p.m. The man who had stood on a rainy sidewalk and told Derek to let go of her arm. "I want that too," she said. He kissed her. The sun set behind them. The campus hummed with the sounds of spring. She had been reborn on a September morning. 8 years before this moment. She had chosen herself over a man who did not deserve her. She had built a life from nothing, brick by brick, case by case. And she had found someone who saw her, not the woman she had been, not the woman she was running from, but the woman she was becoming. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time in 2 lives, she was not afraid to find out. The trial was brief. Derek Walsh pleaded guilty to identity theft and evidence tampering. He was sentenced to 18 months in state prison. Scarlett did not attend the sentencing. She read about it in the Boston Globe online. Sitting in her apartment, Maya beside her. "He's gone," Maya said. "He's gone. What do you feel?" She thought about it. The weight. The closure. The strange emptiness where Derek used to live in her mind. Scarlett thought about it. She felt the absence of weight she had been carrying since she was 22. She felt the closing of a door she had left open for too long. She felt the beginning of something she could not yet name. "I feel free." Maya hugged her. They sat together in the quiet apartment. The evening light filtering through the blinds. The sound of traffic drifting up from the street. "What now?" Maya asked. Scarlett looked at the city outside her window. The city where she had rebuilt herself. The city where she had fallen in love. The city that had become her home. "Now I live my life." Graduation was in May. Scarlett walked across the stage in her black gown. Her mother in the audience. Maya cheering from the 3rd row. Adrian watching from the faculty section with an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. She received her diploma. She shook the dean's hand. She looked at the crowd, her mother crying. Maya waving. Adrian standing with his hands in his pockets. Not clapping. Just watching. She walked off the stage. She found him in the crowd. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you. So what now?" She looked at the campus one last time. The buildings where she had learned. The library where she had fallen in love. The sidewalks where she had walked home in the snow. "I start my own firm," she said, "and I spend the rest of my life proving that second chances are real." He took her hand. "Then let's go." They walked out of the graduation tent together. Her mother was waiting with tears in her eyes. Maya was holding flowers from a street vendor. Professor Hartwell stood at the edge of the crowd, and when Scarlett caught her eye, she nodded once. She had done it. She had survived her first year at Harvard. She had faced the committee and won. She had watched Derek Walsh be arrested for the crimes he had committed against her. She had built a career from nothing, and she had fallen in love with someone who saw her clearly. She was 23. She had her whole life ahead of her, and for the first time, she was not afraid. They walked out of the graduation tent together, into the sunlight, into the future she had built. Behind her was a past she had finally closed. Ahead of her was everything she had ever wanted. A career she had built from nothing. A man who loved her without conditions. A future that belonged to no one but herself. She looked at Adrian beside her. His hand was warm. His presence was steady. She thought about all the moments that had led here, the library, the coffee, the study group, the snowstorm, the hearing. Each one had been a step toward this. She tightened her grip on Adrian's hand. He looked at her. He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile like that, without reservation, without weight, without the shadow of the past. "Ready?" he asked. She looked at the world in front of her. The sunlight, the city, the life she had fought for. Ready. She was ready. Scarlett Hayes walked out of Harvard Yard with her diploma in one hand and Adrian Chase's hand in the other. Behind her was a past she had finally closed. Ahead of her was everything she had ever wanted. She had been broken once. She had rebuilt herself. And she had found someone who would stay through every version of her. She was not afraid of the future anymore. She was ready for it. If this story kept you listening until the end, subscribe to Warm Era. The next romantic revenge story is already waiting.